the progressive campaign of Reverend Jesse Jackson, and the Democratic Party decided to stack up primaries because progressive campaigns are typically poorer campaigns and you cannot afford to get to all of the states. Reverend Jackson just fooled everybody because he finished first and second in Super Tuesday. So it's something to think about. The history is in trying to knock out progressives. Hope you enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Boy, the night or the morning is still dark here after Super Tuesday. What did you think of the results? Call me at 773-763-WCPT. 773-763-9278. We have a tremendous panel, and you are part of that panel, everybody, as we stream to you live from WCPT820.com in Chicago and Milwaukee 1017 FM, streaming on 1017fm.com. All my guys, the devil advocates up there, devil's advocates. And then Madison 92.7 FM, our new home up there. And you can stream live on Talk, excuse me. Let me get all of this right. It's actually Talk 1017 FM and Talk 92.7fm.com, so that you can stream us live. And of course, I'm over here on my own Facebook page, on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, Santita Jackson and Friends. So please like and share. And then we're also streaming on my new YouTube page, Santita Jackson Show, the Santita Jackson Show. So please like and subscribe, but we need you to be in both places. Got a lot to talk about today. Were you surprised? I was surprised, and it was interesting to see the glee of the mainstream media, because they now have a new front runner. We'll see. I mean, because of course we have Illinois that's coming, we have Michigan that's coming. There is so much that's on the plate. It's very clear that it seems like South Carolina became the new New Hampshire, the new Iowa. It really set the tone, or did a reset on the race itself. So what do you think about that? You tell me. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and let's talk about last night. And let's talk about, more than that, the direction of the Democratic Party. God, so many wonderful people. And then in the second hour, as we continue this discussion, we're going to talk with a man named Branko Marcetic. Branko Marcetic. And he has some very interesting, he's done some investigating of Senator Biden, Vice President Biden, and I think it's important for us to know his record. I think it's important for us to know Bernie Sanders' record. I mean, they're really the two candidates they're going to slug it out until the convention. And so he has some very interesting things to tell us. He has a book called Yesterday's Man, the case against Joe Biden. It's interesting. This is not about diminishing everybody. This is really about finding out the person you're going to vote for. I think we need to find out who Bernie is, because what's past is prologue. You need to know who you're voting for. You need to know what they stand for. I didn't know, Lady B, that Joe Biden was not a Democrat until he was 27.
Right, I didn't know either.
So when he says that he's a lifelong Democrat, that's not quite true. It's not quite true. He actually became a Democrat at the age of 27. You were surprised by that, huh?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's very important to understand even the struggles. I mean, because Elizabeth Warren was a Republican. And, and people, as you grow, as you get older, as you grow, you evolve. And so I don't hold that against anybody. My thing is, when you try to obscure it, I'm not accusing the vice president of doing that. I'm saying with anybody, when you try to obscure that becomes problematic. If you let me know how you have evolved, if you've evolved, it helps me to understand where you're coming from. Because at the end of the day, whoever you elect, you're going to have to negotiate with everybody. Okay, so this is really not about who you like, who you love. It really is about the person who you feel, once they get into office, you will have the best chance of negotiating your position. So, we've got a lot to talk about today. So, I'm going to go into some of these headlines so that we can get to this fantastic panel who want to share with us what they saw last night that kept us up until the middle of the night. I saw several of my friends who are pundits on television, and guess what? They were at 3 o'clock in the morning. They were sitting up with me. Unbelievable, looking fresh, but I know they were tired. Oh, according to this report from Fox News, Biden surges to victory across Super Tuesday map as Sanders claims delegate prize in California. Former Vice President Joe Biden surged to victory. Wow! And did he have a night? Did he have a night? They're calling him the comeback kid. With 90% of the precincts reporting, Biden was ahead of Sanders, 33% to 29%. 602,000 votes to 531,000 votes in total. So, and they're likely to receive a similar share of California's. Um, they're supposed to be really coming out neck and neck after all of this is done. And the exit polls, according to NBC News, says that almost 3 in 10 Democrats decided in the last few days, really after South Carolina, the person for whom they would vote. What did you think about that? And then this report from 538 says that even as Democrats are voting, there's lots of uncertainty. Wow, lots of uncertainty in the electorate. How will that play out as we get to Milwaukee in the summertime? Black voters have powered Biden's southern surge, but Latinos gave Sanders the edge in California. That is from CNN.com. I wonder what black voters are seeing that Latino voters are not seeing, and what Latino voters are seeing that black voters are not seeing. That's interesting, because that could be a tremendous coalition if the black and browns came together. But, we're not monolithic. Some people are progressive, some people are conservative. I mean, and we're all mixes of many, many things. But the black voter has put Joe Biden on top of the heap. And, interestingly enough, white suburban mothers, white suburban women. Yeah, they voted for him too. In the meantime, Truth Out had a very revelatory article that says that Texas has shuttered more polling places than any other state in the South since 2012, and the most of the closures, unsurprisingly, disproportionately hit black and Latino areas. According to this a new analysis by The Guardian, it has closed 750 polling locations since 2012. The state had one polling place for every 4,000 residents. I saw on CNN just before I came in that there was a man who waited 7 hours in line, African American, to vote. 7 hours. He did not get out of the line until 1 o'clock in the morning. So, what do you think, everybody? What do you think about all of this? And guess what? It turns out that Mike Bloomberg might be looking at getting out of the race. Yeah, this gamble that he made to invest all of his energies, all of his monies in these Super Tuesday, in the Super Tuesday states, well, he came up dry, everybody. So he's weighing, according to Politico, he is weighing dropping out as early as Wednesday after losing a string of Super Tuesday states. So what do you think is going to happen? $500 million he has spent, and I don't care whether he has 100 times more, of course he does. That's still a lot of money. I wonder what he's thinking right now. No one likes to be rejected, but he was rejected by the voters, it seems. And a Central Park 5 member, Kevin Richardson, one of the 5 boys wrongly convicted of the 1989 rape of a jogger in New York City's Central Park, said that Mike Bloomberg he and Trump are cut from the same cloth. They're businessmen. They are more alike than you think. Wow. Isn't that interesting that he would say that, huh? That's right. And it turns out he said something very interesting, Michael Bloomberg. And this all might be moot because he might be getting out of the race. But according to Forbes, if Democratic presidential candidate Mike Bloomberg was 95 years old and had prostate cancer, he could afford advanced treatments, of course. But what about a 95-year-old who's not a billionaire? Well, he made the following statement, Mayor Bloomberg: if you show up with prostate cancer and you're 95, we should say, go and enjoy, have a nice day, live a long life. There's no cure, we can't do anything. If you're a young person, we should do something about it. Now, interestingly, Mayor Rahm Emanuel's brother, Zeke Emanuel, who is one of the authors of ACA, said the same thing about 75-year-olds. That if they get sick, eh, they've lived a great life. Let them go. I don't know. Must be how you was raised, as they say. I don't get that. The World Health Organization says that the global death rate of the new coronavirus is 3.4%. Wow. That's the mortality rate for what is known in the medical community as COVID-19, the disease caused by the new coronavirus. Wow. Everybody, I hope that you are being careful. There lots of things are being canceled. Lots of events are being canceled because of the coronavirus. The Nashville tornadoes have killed at least 25 people, and guess what? Hundreds more are homeless. Let us pray for our brothers and sisters down in Nashville. Oh boy, it's a lot going on, everybody. And did you hear about the LA County Sheriff who said that 8 deputies took photos of the Kobe Bryant crash scene? Now, what's so disturbing about that, not only did they take pictures of the crash scene, they took pictures of the bodies, what was left, and they were passing them around. And for her portion, Mrs. Vanessa Bryant is looking at suing, and she should, but I mean, no family, none of those families should have to endure something so awful. The Trump administration has quietly cut funding to the nation's poorest schools, everybody, thanks to an under-the-radar bookkeeping change at the Department of Education. And this I got from the Independent out of England, independent newspaper. Hundreds of rural schools across the U.S. are set to lose vital funds. It was reported in the New York Times. The department has changed the eligibility criteria for the Rural and Low-Income School Program, which provides funding for school districts in some of the poorest parts of the country. These are not necessarily black areas. These are poor white people who are about to lose their funding. Wow. In the meantime, President Trump's campaign is suing the Washington Post for defamation. That'll be fun to watch. And then Rod Blagojevich, former governor, has been stripped of his law license. Would they just leave this man alone? Goodness gracious. Tonight, everybody, the Chicago Bulls will be playing the Timberwolves, and our Milwaukee Bucks, I claim you too, will be playing the Pacers. The Blackhawks, our hockey team, well, they were triumphant over the Ducks, 6-2. And the Dow was down 785 points, the S&P down 86 points, the NASDAQ down 268 points today. In Chicago, we're expecting a high of 43 degrees. In Milwaukee, 40 degrees will be the high. Madison, the high will be 41 degrees. Okay, everybody, let us get right to it. What did you think of last night? All my morning stars over here, let me know what you're thinking. All my morning stars who are over on my YouTube page, The Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe. Leave some comments there. Leave comments over here on Facebook. Let me just start with this all-star group of pundits that I've got here, because I want my own pundits. I sure do. Let me start with you very quickly, everybody, for about a minute, so that we can get everybody in before the break. Starting with you, Charles Ellison, my colleague. Well, he's really more than my colleague. He's really a mentor, because he has the B note. You know, he's been a pundit on television. He's a brilliant writer. He does it all. But he's also a host on WURD, one of our sister stations up in Philly. Okay, Charles Ellison, in about a minute, if you can.
What's going on, Santita? And speaking of Philly, yeah, wow, what a night. You know, and that's where Biden is from. Biden is from the Philly metro area, and that felt like the Philadelphia Eagles 2017-2018 playoff season, where we were the underdogs, and that's exactly what Biden channeled last night, because there were very low expectations for Biden. There were multiple states he did not compete in. I had him winning 7 out of the 14 states. I definitely saw him winning, and I had said this before. I don't do too much on predictions, but after South Carolina, I'm like, you know what? He's going to win 7 states. They're going to be all the southern states. He will win Texas, especially because of black voters and older voters. And that's what we saw last night. And last point, it was just good. It wasn't party insiders tipping the scale. It was just a lot of old-fashioned teamwork, and that's how a party works. That was happening last night, at least for Biden, and that's a message that Sanders still hasn't gotten yet. That's something he's going to have to work on for the rest of the Democratic nomination path.
Absolutely, and what he's also going to have to do is bring in people who have done this before. He's not the first progressive. Really, the progressive who broke through in progressive politics was Jesse Jackson in 1984 and 1988. And a lot of those people are still around. And you need to pull them into your campaign so you can figure out how they did it, right? I mean, this is the way it works. Robert Patillo, attorney Robert Patillo, let me bring him up. What's on your mind, Robert Patillo? Attorney Patillo? Well, you know what? Let me go to Latasha Brown. Latasha? Hey, what did we see last night? So you've been in the South, and so you've been with these black voters. Talk to us.
Voters, and I sum it up with I realized I use a lot of reference to my aunt, who's 85 years old and who's so wise. And so I'm starting to understand that she really is a political strategist.
You can't write off our elders because they've seen it before.
Entire campaign, she has been right on this entire election cycle. I really just need to start talking to her and shaping my analysis. But I think part of what happened is that the South Carolina win for Biden was a lot of air under his wings. That was a big push for him, and then when you look traditionally, black voters traditionally vote as a block. It's interesting when people, say that folks are divided. The truth of the matter is that 80% of black voters normally go in the same direction. I was a little shocked in some ways of the margin of the win. So towards on the ground, everywhere I would go, there was certainly a lot of conversation around Biden. What was interesting is I never heard people say they were excited about Biden. People thought that he was the one that could beat Trump. There was a lot of conversation. I think folks have to understand there's a lot of anxiety in the black community around this Trump administration and what does that mean for our community. That racism, is a traumatic experience for us. And so to have a person in office who is aligned with white supremacists, that was just that's too much for us. And so part of what happens, unfortunately, is that we will respond out of fear, more so than we will respond out of what I say is hope. And so one thing I think sums it up. Last night, I really, really wanted, me personally, I wanted Elizabeth Warren to do better, and to have a high showing. And my 85-year-old aunt told me, I really like that lady, and I think we need a woman president, but white folks ain't gonna let her win. And she said, and so we got to go with Biden because that's the best chance of beating Trump. And to me, that's kind of sums up. I mean, she said a lot in that. It sounded like just regular kind of conventional wisdom, but but there is a lot of truth in what she said. What is very clear is that I don't think that many of the candidates, many of the folks that I talked to that voted for Biden were particularly excited. I think we can see that in turnout numbers, that the turnout in South Carolina was 15%. So only 15% of the population even bothered to come vote. You see a similar trend in the rest of the states, somewhere between 15 and 24%. But for the most part, it was a very extremely low turnout. But those that came out, the majority of those voted for Biden. And so I believe part of that was Biden seemed like the most solid, clear path to victory of beating Trump. And I think that had an enormous impact on how people showed up to the polls. And so it's interesting. I also think that there is, when you look at the age and you look who voted, quite frankly, although young people are a larger part of the electorate, at this point, the truth of the matter is the turnout is still overwhelmingly older voters. And so I think we had a combination of those things. And so we saw, Biden have the showing that he had last night.
Let me go to you, Dwight Mckee. What did you think?
Well, I thought it was very interesting. What I saw was the media proclaim a eulogy, a premature eulogy for Biden, and then declare a wake-up call, a resurrection. It seems as if that they had written him off, had written him off at a time when the moderates had consolidated, and before the progressives were able to consolidate. And so when he was able to benefit from moderates consolidating, they declared this great victory. It would probably, I think, have been a different story had the progressives had a different strategy and they got a chance to consolidate. All the numbers would look different. And so I think that the takeaway from it for the Democratic Party is for Biden, blacks are just not part of his base. They are his base. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Elizabeth Warren and which way she goes, if she tries to run it through all the way through, or if she tries to get behind Bernie and turn it into a different kind of race. So I got a wait and see attitude to see where it all goes in this next go around. I also am very interested in where it goes with these next debates, because it becomes now a 2 or 3 man debate. And now that Biden again becomes almost a front runner, he's kind of open game. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that and how Bernie handles that. You know, Bernie, how that part of his personality plays out in a 2 or 3 man debate. So we'll wait and see.
You know what? When we come back, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, I want to hear from you. I'm going to give you that opening minute when we come in on the other side. What do you make of last night's results on Super Tuesday? In the next hour, we're going to be talking with Ronco Marcetic. He has a book, Yesterday's Man, the case against Joe Biden. Looking at his record, but we're going to look at everybody's records, because you know what? Before you get who you want, you need to get what you need. You need to know who people are. You need to know who people are. He said he's an Obama Biden Democrat. He's been a Democrat lifelong, but he really became a Democrat at 27. Let's talk about it, everybody. On the Santita Jackson Show, streaming live on Talk1017FM.com out of Milwaukee and Talk927FM.com.
The history of Air America lives here. This is WCPT.
It's 2830. Okay.
Sorry.
No, because I'm thinking that. Okay, no, let me know, because I need to see that, because I'm thinking I'm operating on 2850.
Working with Mike Bloomberg was one of the most empowering experiences.
Okay, why did we?
Because they're 15. We're on the 15 seconds delay.
Okay, but let me know, because I'm doing 5850. I'm doing 2850 and 5850 in my head.
No.
So that's, you have to make sure that I know that. Okay, make sure that I know that, because that's why I was stretching.
Oh, okay.
Okay. That's why. And until, remember, I know the clock.
Okay.
And I'm one of these on-air talents who you really don't have to get out.
You should be proud of what you've done.
I mean, unless I'm really distracted, because I know the clock.
Okay.
I know the clock. So, and I tailor my remarks accordingly. If I need to stretch, I'll stretch. If I need to compress it, I know how to compress it. Because when I have to compress it, when I have to bring it in, I have to make grammatical changes. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I might have to make a plural. I might have to pluralize something or singularize something. So those are the things that I'm always looking at. You know, that's why I said, you know,
here's the latest.
that's why I want these tests done by really 4:45, 4:46, so that I can wrap my mind around all this other stuff that I'm doing here. Okay?
Okay.
All right? So that's why, you know,
Okay. I'll hold up.
No.
I wrote it down.
No. If you just give it to me, you don't have to hold it up, because I'm not trying to look over there. I'm trying to look at my notes.
Okay, let me.
still okay.
Okay, I just need, no, I'll write it down here. Now that I know it's not 2850, and now it's not 5850, it's 5830 and 50. Now that I know that, I'm good.
So both hours.
So the brakes are at 2850, 2830, and 5830. That's all I need to know.
Hear that
Because
sound?
we started on
It's
50.
priceless. Because in every heartbeat,
Yeah,
there's
that's why
information
at
that
the
could change
beginning
the way
we
you think
had
about
this,
heart health.
it was
Heartline is an app-based
605.55
research
was
study from
15
Johnson &
seconds.
in
But that's not
collaboration
getting
with
out.
Apple,
That's getting
where you
in.
can share
Right.
your heart
We
information
still on-
and earn
Yeah, no,
rewards for
I'm saying,
activating
let's
study
get out.
activities.
So
Right.
I know
could
that
advance
it's,
heart health for
because
everyone.
that's what I need to know.
By beat, by beat.
Okay,
If you're 65 or older
so,
and have an iPhone, you could be eligible
right.
to take part. Go to heartline.com/visit to learn more. The Heartline Study. Know your heart.
Hey, it's Brock from Hero Power. If you care about the environment like me, you only want to support clean energy when you pay your electricity bill. But how do you know that money actually goes to renewable energy? By joining the Hero Power Clean Energy Program, you never have to second guess it, because Hero Power only purchases Green E certified renewable energy certificates to match 100% of our customers' electricity consumption. Other electricity suppliers may say they offer clean energy but lack the Green E certification, the trusted global leader in clean energy certification. And you can join Hero Power at no extra cost. Your bill doesn't change, your service doesn't change. You never pay more than the ComEd rate. Plus, WCPT listeners can get a $25 credit off their first bill. Join today at myheropower.com/WCPT. You're just 3 clicks away at myheropower.com/WCPT.
At Capital One, you can
30
open a new
seconds.
savings
We're just
account
under
in about
30
5
seconds.
minutes and earn 5 times the national average. Banking with Capital One means 5 times the savings to help pay for your perfect honeymoon. Or 5 times the savings toward your family's perfect vacation.
Big fan of water rides.
It's time to help make your savings goals come true. This is Banking Reimagined. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Rate comparison based on FDIC national rate. Capital One NA member FDIC. Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Streaming live on Milwaukee's Talk 1017FM.com. Of course, that's our home station up in Milwaukee. We're going to be the home station really for the Democrats come July when we have our convention. It's going to be incredible. Talk 1017FM.com. We're streaming live there. And in Madison, my home in Madison, Wisconsin. Yes, yes, yes. Talk 92.7 FM, everybody. And you can stream live on talk927fm.com. And of course, at our home studios here in Chicago, WCPT820.com. We're streaming live there. And we're on Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends. Please like us and share. And then we're on YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show. Like and subscribe. We're talking about Super Tuesday. Were you shocked? Were you shocked? Boy, oh boy, Vice President Biden cleaned up, really fueled by his overwhelming win in South Carolina. So what do you think? Do you know would you know why? We see a lot of poll closures we've seen that in Texas, and that disadvantaged African American and Latino voters. And we also saw something very interesting yesterday. Latinos are pushing for Bernie. Blacks are pushing for Biden. What does all of that mean? And young people, they're not going to the polls the way we hoped that they would. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we saw yesterday. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, president-elect of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, more than 66,000 lawyers. What did you see last night? Attorney Hoffler? Okay, well, you know what? Let me go then to Attorney Robert Patillo. Robert Patillo? Hey, okay, what did you see last night?
Currently constructed. By having Iowa and New Hampshire be the first 2 states, and even the Nevada caucuses, you have 2 of the first 3 states are not one person, one vote. You have this complicated caucus system. And also, two of the first three states are 95, 96% white states, which don't reflect the remainder of what you're going to be seeing on Super Tuesday and throughout the remainder of the map. So I think Bernie's campaign, Bernie's supporters got a little bit fat on empty calories in Iowa and New Hampshire, and the media started pushing this narrative of him having this massive lead nationwide. And you start seeing late-breaking polling that seemed to reflect that, but that polling was a snapshot of how things looked after the media narrative of Bernie being a front runner. Once people actually started voting, and I think many of these polling companies, we got to start putting them out of business because they've been wrong about Super Tuesday. They were wrong about Trump in 2016. They're wrong about the Republican nomination in 2016. But these polls are consistently being wrong. But what we're seeing is as regular people are actually getting the chance to vote, once the diversity of the Democratic Party is being highlighted, given the opportunity to speak, we're seeing a far different outcome than what the pundit class would have you believe is happening on the ground. So the media plays a role in this, because I do think that the young people who are part of Bernie's base, when they kind of got the idea in their minds that, oh, it's all locked up, it looks like Bernie has this together, then you didn't see that massive wave of them show up that people expected on Super Tuesday. The brilliance of the Biden campaign is you always depend on little old black ladies in the South. That if you have your campaign built around little old black ladies in the South, it doesn't matter what election you're running for, they are going to go out and vote, and they're going to be out there in massive numbers. When you're depending on the youth vote, when you're depending on bringing in new votes from outside of the campaign, when you're depending on this large influx of Latino and Hispanic voters, those are people where, if you're in vote builder, if you're doing campaign organizing, they're not your super voters. They don't have a long history of voting. Often they don't have stable addresses, whereas the little old black lady in the South has been in the same house for 30 or 40 years. These people have transient addresses. They have cell phones instead of landlines. It's a lot harder to have touch points during your GOTV efforts to get them to the polls. And the fact that this broke so sharply late indicates that it was just a failure of GOTV and a failure of targeting and very incorrect polling on the state level. Bernie's campaign has never, since 2016, fully addressed its issues with the African American community, and they thought that they could just run around it. That was evidenced by the fact that he skipped Selma, and even Bloomberg took the heat and sat down and had Congress turn their backs on him. You can't skip Selma right before Super Tuesday when the entire South is going to be voting, and then expect to get those votes. And even though the delegate math may be close, let's think about the fact that Biden's campaign will be able to argue. Let's say that nobody has 1,991 going into the convention. He'll be able to argue that I won on Super Tuesday. I won 10 out of the 14 states. So it wasn't close. I have the most states. I have he'll probably have the popular vote lead. I've had the most votes. And the delegate math will be very close. So I think the Sanders campaign has to completely retool going into the other big states on March 17th, March 24th, to find out how to make up for some of these deficiencies. And one of the worrying points is going to have to be the Castro controversy now comes back, because Florida is going to be the next big state that votes. And when you have a big chunk of Miami and South Florida who are currently not humongous Bernie fans because of his comments on Castro, whether or not they were academically correct, this isn't the time to have that argument 2 weeks before you need those votes potentially to give you the delegate lead that you need. So I think it's going to be interesting to see the Sanders campaign response. By no means is his nomination over, or should we just pack things up and head to the convention. But campaigns are living, organic creatures, and we have to see how the Sanders campaign is going to react and respond.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what do you see?
Good morning. Well, what I see is that Biden had another good day.
He had another good night. And I say that because that's what the numbers reflect. But I think Biden does have to be careful, because this is another reminder that he must have the black vote to win. He's got to have the black vote to win wherever he goes. And he's got to, by the way, have the black vote to beat Donald Trump if he is a front runner. So what does that mean? That means that I go back to the point I've made previously, that there need to be discussions right now, right quick and in a hurry, with the leadership of the black community, however that is defined, to talk about an agenda and issues that concern the African American community, or he's going to be very, very surprised at some point. So I hope that that is something that he's going to do. He cannot, this Super Tuesday was proof positive that he must have the black vote. He must have black women voters in order for him to win. And so I look at his victory. I applaud his team. The coalitions that were formed helped. He didn't put a lot of money into this segment. He didn't put a lot of money into really courting the black community. So, because that would be Bloomberg who did that. But I think it's going to be critically important for the leadership to sit down and meet with him. And whether he extends an arm to them or they go to him, it's got to happen for him to have the resounding support that he needs from the black community.
You know, let me bring out a caller, because, you know, Mark, you say that you were a Bloomberg supporter and now you switched your allegiances to Biden. What happened?
Well, what I'm saying, if Biden drops out, if Bloomberg drops out, I can support Biden. I'm not adverse to Biden, but
Mark, do you have your radio on in the background? Okay. Oh, okay. All right, because we're getting some feedback. A little bit. Okay, yes, it is much better. Yes, continue.
Okay. Yeah, so I hope that we can get to a point where people like myself and others can make that decision and not be second guessed that we're trying to stop or we're anti-Bernie, but that we just evaluated the qualifications and what the expectations are. And if in the final analysis, it's a Biden or Sanders, I just don't think Sanders reaches the mark.
But, you know, I think that you have the right to believe that. But, you know, and the thing is, you just stand on that and let people weigh in as they do. I mean, people are going to have all kinds of opinions about your opinions, and you can't push back on people about that, you know? So, I mean, it is, no, I'm just saying, no, I'm saying it is what it is, right? It is what it is. You support who you support. You're going to vote for whomever you vote for. And, you know, and I think that people, and you know what, and some people are going to disagree with you, and that's it, you know, Mark, they are. Yes, Charles? Sure.
Yeah, I think to Mark's point a little bit, and even to your point, and this is something that Biden has to work on, and this is going to the attorney's point. Yes, he's going to have to make sure he not only recognizes, but he appreciates the full muscle that the black vote flexed for him, showed for him in South Carolina and last night.
Well, hold on, but Charles, let me ask you this. Don't you think he already appreciates that, but what do you think he's going to do about that?
And I think here's where this is the second point. I think that this is really what Biden has to work on. Biden's going to have to show more, you know, sort of empathy, if you will, for a lot of that frustration and anger that you see, particularly on the progressive wing of the Democrat. He has to appreciate that more. He has to figure out a way. This can't be a splintered battle between moderates and progressives. He's going to have to figure out how to unify all of that, how to bring progressives and younger voters on board. So that's a real problem for Democrats, a real problem for Biden. You can't have that low young voter turnout. We saw some, you know, very low turnout numbers for younger voters last night. We've been seeing that too, signs of that since Iowa. And I think that's something that Biden needs to recognize and work on and empathize more with with folks in the Bernie camp and also in the Warren camp as well. I don't think, and hopefully he's going in that direction after last night.
Let me go to Chaparral. I want to bring in as many of these other callers as I can. Chaparral, what's on your mind?
Hey, Santita, thank you so much for taking my call. As my grandmother would say, I am fit to be tied.
Why? Why?
Y'all know I like watch news cycles 24/7, but today I have my Netflix lineup ready because I will not be watching regular TV. And here's why, Santita. Because what we see is a concerted effort to promote a candidate that has not even put forth one plan for anybody in America. Everybody talks about, oh, President Biden is the best one to beat Trump and all this. What is he offering us? See, I'm looking at the policy. I don't have no love affair with none of these candidates. I'm trying to figure out, what are you going to do for me? How are you going to make my life better? And I sit here and I watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, everybody 24 hours, free bashing of Bernie. And I'm not even a Bernie supporter, but I like a fair process. So you can't come to me trying to sit up here and shove Biden down my throat. And then we have these Sambo Negroes, Clyburn being the head Negro in charge, crying on TV, talking about, oh, he is the best one. Joe knows us.
Oh, wait, slow down, Chaparral. This is too...
I want you to know that I am voting for Chaparral.
Come on, give her applause in here. Yes.
Whatever she's running for, I am voting for her. That's the kind of passion and truth that I want. That's the kind of leadership that I want.
Natasha, this is what I'm saying to you. Biden orchestrated the 94 crime bill. See, I'm not going to let you forget, because I know what happened to our people. We have over 1 million plus black men incarcerated based on that bill. I don't forget. Mm-hmm. He helped Clarence Thomas get in office. I don't forget. He voted against busing. I do not forget. There's so many things that he did was detrimental. And we were asleep as a black community for 8 years while Obama was in office. I'll be damned if I'm going to put Biden in office so we can sleep some more. And we have to begin to tell the truth. As black pundits on the air, on the radio, on CNN, on MSNBC, we have to tell them what they did to us. Mm-hmm. If this was a Jewish issue that we see going on every day, you think they let us forget the Holocaust? No. They bring it up every second. So I am not going to let Biden forget what he did to the black community. I'm not going to let him do that. And I'm not going to let the black symbols of the Congress and the CDC tell me I need to vote for him because he know us. He know us so good that he locked us up. And I'm not going to forget that. I will sit here and write in my candidate. I will write in my candidate. I will not be voting for nobody who. I say no to Joe. Joe can go.
Hashtag Joe can go.
Okay. Panel?
So this is Natasha. It's so interesting. It's reminiscent. I laugh to keep from crying because quite frankly, I am trying to look at this from a perspective of what I heard, like I said earlier, what I heard from family members, but there's a part of me that I am deeply, just me individually, I am deeply, deeply disturbed. Everything that Chaparral said, that ultimately, we have a default position for white men. Mediocre white men in this country are our default position around leadership. And whenever there is we see it over and over and over again. We saw it even in the Jackson campaign, that as soon as a progressive
is actually of gaining ground. What we see is the established part of the party, and folks that don't know what the establishment, people know what that is, or folks in position who are there to maintain the status quo of those in power. And so what we continue to see over and over again is we see the complicitness of the party leadership to literally push this whole narrative of fear, which I do think has been pushed for the black community around. If we don't get Joe, we can't win. We can't beat Trump. And it's so interesting.
If I could say, first of all, as far as that 94 crime bill, yeah, Biden definitely authored that crime bill, but, there's also a lot of complicity as far as the black political media and advocacy community in pushing folks like Biden and Clinton towards that 94 crime bill. I mean, we can't forget that. I mean, I remember, because I grew up in North Philly during those crack wars, and I remember the enormous pressure that was put on black elected officials, who then put pressure, the local, state, and federal, who then put pressure on folks like Biden, who was in the Philly metro area, heard those concerns, because at first they didn't care that black folks were killing each other in neighborhoods like North Philly. And then suddenly they crafted the crime bill, and half the Congressional Black Caucus voted for that crime bill, including folks like, you wouldn't imagine, folks like Cynthia McKinney, who parades around like she's, like a progressive icon. She voted for that crime bill too. I saw that roll call. So we can't forget that. The second thing is that I think it's very much correct. It's tragic that black people have to vote by fear and not by hope. But this is this kind of election where it's not your usual kind of casual presidential election cycle. There is an existential threat to folks in the White House. We're already in a constitutional crisis. If he gets reelected, we are going to very quickly go down the path of Hungary, Turkey, Egypt, Russia. We're already seeing the dress rehearsal. So it's not something where we can play around or feel like, oh, there's going to be a Democratic Party around after this election or after he's reelected. So, that's not going to happen.
I agree.
He showed a proclivity to cut out his opposition. There will be no Democratic Party in existence. There will be no opposition if he gets reelected.
I know, but this is part of the challenge is, and even what you're saying is, we're looking at it really one-sided, because we're operating as if Bernie Sanders has not had a groundswell of winning. Here is a candidate, Biden. The truth of the matter is, what makes him so more electable? In the first three showings, in the first two showings, he didn't come in not one, not second. He literally, in one of the ones, he came in fourth. The bottom line is, there is a concerted effort, and we've got to be honest.
Where's the groundswell of winning? Where's the groundswell of winning from Bernie Sanders? I mean, he tied in Iowa. Yeah, he won New Hampshire. Those are states that are barely demographic representative of the rest of the.
No, but he won the popular vote in all those contests.
And now Biden's ahead with the popular vote, and also ahead by delegates. I'm not saying that black voters are being a bit strategically pragmatic and savvy here.
But I have to tell you, Charles. Let me tell you this. I don't think anyone is. Let me just say this. I don't think anyone is underestimating this. But I tell you, when I was in South Carolina this weekend, what I did do, and Latasha was down there as well, I interviewed young people and our elders, white people, black people, and what was shocking to me was those people who supported Vice President Biden were not aware of his record, Charles. They did not know about his record on busing. And when they found out about it, there was one woman, when I said this to her, I said, well, you support him, and you support him with such passion. I said, what do you think about his record on busing? She said, well, what is that? I shared it with her, and she looked like I had killed her dream. I said, well, what about Anita Hill? Or what about Anita? What about Clarence? I mean, because I hadn't even gotten to the crime bill or him calling Reverend Jesse Jackson boy in the 1988 campaign. I mean, or the fact that
A couple of things I want to offer, and I think that we're underestimating this. If you look at the voting turnout in South Carolina, it was 15%. What does that mean? That means that the majority of black voters were not even interested enough to vote for
2008 levels. But it exceeded 2008 the South Carolina Democratic primary levels, and that's when Barack Obama was running in the South Carolina primary. So no, I understand what you're saying in terms of overall eligible voters. You're right. I'm the same way. I'm very old school about that. We should have 100% turnout, but it still exceeded 2008 levels, and it way exceeded 2016 as well.
What I am saying is that sounds good. Like we can go with the data piece. What I am saying to you is if you look at the numbers of young people and where they voted, that even in South Carolina, even in Alabama, if you look at the black vote, that voters under 45 voted for Sanders. They were not the largest part of the electorate piece, but they voted for Sanders. If you go into, after we're going in this broker convention, what I am saying is the crime bill may not have a certain kind of impact on older voters. I can tell you on firsthand in the 11 states that I'm working in that young people are absolutely tired of particularly the criminal justice system. That is a major issue for them. They feel attacked. I was in a meeting that they had on Monday. They felt attacked. The focus of their attack this election cycle was getting Bloomberg out. And so I think on some level, Bloomberg, and that was effective.
But I'll say this. Okay, South Carolina.
Okay, well, let me tell you this. I have a hard out, and well, hold on, Charles. Charles, Charles, honey, hold on, no, because I want you to make your point. Cause I've got a hard out in under 2 minutes, and I know you're going to have to go because you have to do your radio show. Can you give this to me in about a minute? And Latasha and CK and Robert Patillo, Dwight Mckee, I have someone who's going to come on who's going to talk more extensively about the vice president's record. Because I think that we just need to operate with some information. But Charles, you have brilliant insights. You have less than a minute. Go.
Sorry, yes. With South Carolina, the numbers, voters 17 through 29 were just 11% of the overall electorate. Biden won voters ages 30 years of age and older, that across the board in South Carolina. So he's winning like older millennial voters and also Gen X voters as well. The other thing too is that black voters are not just criminal justice. We're not just focused on criminal justice and cannabis. And there are a lot of older black voters, particularly older millennials now, who are paying bills and paying taxes, and Gen X voters like myself, who are focused on quality of life issues. And that's the problem. It's like everything talks about black and Latino voters, it's within the context of criminal justice and marijuana. He's got to cut that out. He did that back in 2016, and I saw it, and he's doing it again. So he's going to have to get coached a little bit more on understanding that black voters are also quality of life folks who want safe neighborhoods, who want a clean porch step.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think it's going to be a both and. I think we're going to have to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time because many of us, we are over-incarcerated and undereducated. How about that? All of that. So, you know what, Charles, on WURD radio up in Philadelphia, we cannot wait to have you back. And everybody stay here. I wish you didn't have to leave, but more of the Santita Jackson Show. It's getting hot. Okay, I was trying to say I want him over here.
Do you have a house or two flat you'd like to sell quickly? Then call URB Chicago. Get an immediate cash offer.
Mylan, thank you for coming, honey.
Of course, I've been driving for an hour. Got stuck over an hour. Got stuck in traffic.
You see my commute, huh?
Yes.
Come on over here, babe.
Get a market-based, hassle-free cash offer on the spot.
Well, everybody got hot this morning. Thank you, Chaparral. Chaparral. Honey, get over here so you can be seen.
I got you.
Okay. This is Mylan Patton, young man who is a student at the University of Chicago, undergraduate, and one of our young, you're not even a millennial.
A little bit lower than that.
He's a child. Young man. You know what? I think you need to adjust this. You can lift this just a little bit. No, just that one. No, just below.
Oh, this one. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And yes, that's why we have three. Bring it closer, bring it closer. Bring it closer.
Napa adaptive one-brake pads with reliable stopping power. You and yourself for having some.
I'll hold it.
That's
right.
Napa know-how.
This is AP News.
You don't need it much higher than that?
Okay, no, just move it back.
Series of Super Tuesday victories in his campaign.
Okay, so would he be, you know what, you can use this mic. Are you going to put him on another mic?
Yeah,
on that one?
College-educated Americans.
Okay, well, everybody's now, and you know, we're going to keep, we're going to do these, run through these headlines very quickly, because Mr. Marcetic can only stay with us for about 20 minutes. So I'm going to ask him, would you ask him to get our caller, get our guest up very quickly? Yes. I'm going to, let me speak with him. I'll call him myself too.
Elizabeth Warren and Michael Bloomberg scored well below expectations in the 15 primaries. This Texas Biden voter says it had to be a moderate.
It's critically important if we want Trump out of office.
Jackie Quinn, Washington.
AP White House correspondent Zeke Miller on what?
Yes, Mr. Bronco. Is it Marcetic?
He won 9 states yesterday.
Marcetic. Okay.
Now again being called
Marcetic. But this is what we're going to do. And thank you so much for calling me. I was just on the air. I'm going to. Oh no, don't worry about it. Look, everybody wants to speak with you. I'm glad that you made the time to speak with us. If you would do me this favor, I want to bring you on for about a good 12 minutes, and then I will let you go. But I want you to go on and just make your case for 12 minutes. Okay? Okay, fantastic. And so my call screener is about to call you right now. He should be calling you right now. Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mike Bloomberg spent more than $500 million
Who just dropped?
on his
Was that CK?
Samoa.
Yeah, see if
he is reassessing his campaign.
Okay.
The World Health Organization says
right,
so
this would be a type of video on Facebook. This okay?
Is about 3.4%.
No, this is how Facebook is like. The sound is everything is good.
Okay, no, I mean as long as everything is fine.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we need to move this to him though. Can this be moved a little closer?
A little bit closer.
Yeah, because he.
Well, let's see. I actually need 1 second. I had to adjust this very quick.
More than 40% of older Americans take 5 or more medicines, so the risk of side effects or drug interaction goes up as the number of pills increases.
10:30.
Oh, so you need to get out of here because you're going to be going into traffic.
Well, yeah,
I should make it.
No, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. It's just, you're going to be going into traffic.
And offers tips on ensuring proper medicine use. Washington.
2 New Jersey state troopers pulled a trucker to safety Monday just seconds before his burning tractor-trailer exploded. Trooper Robert Tarleton saw the truck flash into flames after it hit a guardrail. He ran over to find Police Lieutenant Edward Ryer already there, stopped on his way home from work. They dragged the driver to safety. He's okay. Rita Foley, AP News.
Yes, a little bit.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Get this together?
Now your WCPT 820 Chicago traffic update.
So, yeah, we're having to adjust
Chicago
this
Southwest
medallion
side, Central Avenue is closed
so that he,
in both
this,
directions.
this
north
is
and Midwest.
sloppy.
Yes, and this doesn't have.
Oh,
no.
that one? Yeah, that one.
No, we just
So
put
you
it like,
just leave it
just
like
put it
that?
like that. That balances it. Okay.
Heavy.
All right, very good.
Starting around 126. Looking at about
Okay.
46 minutes.
Very good. You know what I need you to do? Just walk with me. Turn it just a little bit right here.
Kennedy.
No.
37 minutes
Stick.
still.
Don't touch that.
24 from Montrose. 10 on the Express.
Just a little this way. This
Eisenhower,
watch me
40
Cortez.
minutes,
That's
390
it.
today.
Very good.
How about
That's it. That's
Ryan,
it. That's
22
it.
minutes, 9
That's
minutes
it.
to downtown.
Okay.
7, 21 minutes side.
That's fine.
Eastburn, Bishop Ford, 3. Traffic. Ives, Telemonte.
Well, she got things moving, did she not?
Even more ways to save you money.
She got things moving.
Yes.
Is ready to deliver
I'm
the personal service you
gonna
need for
not
the
put her
savings
name
you
on the
want.
ballot.
Stop by his local office on
I was listening on the way.
Oh my God.
I was listening on the way.
The Pro-Wells, yes. No, that's what I'm voting for.
Get
fired up. Look, even Verlon says, finally, somebody's supposed to choose.
Yeah, but that's she's not going to vote for Trump.
Huh?
She's not going for Trump, though.
I know, but he just might vote for Chappelle.
Yeah, no, he needs to go on and understand how politics really works, and he should. If my thing, look, if you're going to vote for Trump, I don't have a problem with that. I don't agree with it, but I don't. But what you need to do, this needs to be turned just a little bit.
Questions flood your mind.
Okay.
Thank
you. Just turn it just a little bit more. So yes, so I'm not chopped off. Just turn it. Just stay with me.
You can partner with your
Okay,
doctor
that's
and find
it.
ways to
Let's
face
see.
NBC on
Now
your
you
own
sit here.
terms.
Visit findyournbcvoice.com and learn how to speak up and have
The thing is, none of these guys go into the
questions have
room
answers. Visit
with the Trumps
findyournbcvoice.com to find
with
some
our
of yours.
concerns and confront. They go in with a
30 years
hug.
is a long time. I'm 30.
That's all they
just
do.
Had my first child.
And then they come
30
and then
years
they
is also
tear
the
Democrats
difference in
apart.
life expectancy between
And they tell us how
Inglewood,
racist
where I
Democrats
live,
are
and the
without
Mad Mile,
confronting the
because
racism
a
in the
broken
Republican
Medicaid
Party.
funding system
That's
favors
hypocritical to
some
me.
communities over
And it
others.
is also
Call your state
also
lawmakers
cowardice.
And tell them to pass
I'm
the
tired
fair
of that.
funding for community
I'm not saying that
hospitals
with him.
so all of us
I'm saying
can
just
get the care we
generally.
need.
You know, and you get
I
tired
don't
of
want
that.
my
It's like
life
if you're
cut
going to
short.
confront,
I want to watch my kid grow.
A message from SEIU Healthcare Illinois.
Confront everybody.
WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Boy, oh boy, thank you, Chapearl, you and Mark, because you all got things stirred up here on the Santita Jackson Show. As we stream live in Milwaukee on 101.7 FM, you can go to 101.fm.com, and in Madison, our new homes up in Wisconsin, a 92.7 FM. You can stream live on talk927fm.com, and of course, our home station here in Chicago, WCPT. You can stream live here on WCPT820.com and on Facebook. We're having a great time over there on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and of course the YouTube page, the Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe over there, and like and share over here on Facebook. And I'm joined in studio, my fellow panelists, by Patton, a University of Chicago student, and we are so excited to have him with us today. How are you, Mylon?
I'm doing well. So excited to be here.
Oh, look, honey, we've gotten things started this morning because we've been talking about the primary with the head of Black Voters Matter. She's also been a Harvard Fellow. Latasha Brown, civil rights lawyer, brilliant civil rights lawyer, Robert Patillo, and attorney C.K. Hoffler, who is the president-elect of the National Bar Association, which is the largest and oldest Black Bar Association in the world. More than 66,000 lawyers, have elected her to be their president. And of course, Dwight Mckee, noted social scientist. We're so excited to have you all. And you know what? Chaparral got things started, everybody. And before I go to a few of these headlines, she said, we will not forget. We will not forget. So we want to talk about, we're going to be talking about these, there's a wonderful book, Yesterday's Man by Branko Marcetic. And he is going to talk to us about what he has found out about Vice President Biden, and he says, we really need to understand who he is. Yesterday's Man, the case against Joe Biden. Ouch, ouch, ouch. I did not know that he didn't become a Democrat until he was 27 years of age. Did you? No. So let's get a few of these headlines, and yes, call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and you can also text us on that line. Thank you, GWC Injury Lawyers. And let us get through a few of these headlines, because I think Pearl just got us all tongue-tied today. Biden has surged to victory across the Super Tuesday map, powered by the black vote. And Sanders has claimed the delegate prize and the popular vote in California, powered by the Latino vote. Oh, wow. What do you think is going to happen next, everybody? Because we've got Michigan coming up, and Ohio and Illinois. So many battleground states, and what's going to happen next? Texas has closed hundreds of polling sites at areas with fast-growing and black and Latino populations. Will they rectify that by the fall? We don't know. The coronavirus, well, it's deadlier than thought, everybody. It's deadlier than the flu. According to the World Health Organization, the global death rate of the new coronavirus, COVID-19, is 3.4%. 3.4%. What are you doing? Everybody's washing their hands. We should do that anyway, but a lot of people are really, really nervous about this, and people are trying to stay at home, work from home, and they're canceling conferences, everybody. The Nashville tornadoes killed at least 25 people. Hundreds are homeless. Our prayers and thoughts are going out to our brothers and sisters down in Tennessee. And the Trump administration, while we're talking about the presidential race, did you know that they quietly cut funding to the nation's poorest schools? It's an under-the-radar bookkeeping change at the at the Department of Education. Now, I got this from the Independent newspaper out of England. Hundreds of rural schools across the United States are set to lose vital funds. This report first came out in the New York Times. The department has changed the eligibility criteria for the rural and low-income school program, which provides funding for school districts in some of the poorest parts of the country. It will make it harder for these districts to demonstrate their eligibility, meaning hundreds of them will lose tens of thousands of dollars, and in some cases, much, much more. This is really sad, sad news. The LA County Sheriff says 8 deputies took photos of the Kobe Bryant crash scene. 8. Inexcusable. And it seems that Kobe Bryant's widow, Vanessa, is going to be suing them as well. I believe she should. President Trump, speaking of lawsuits, is going to be suing the Washington Post for defamation. He said, you know, you've accused me of working for Russia. I want you to prove it. You're defaming my character. Wow. And these people will not leave this man alone. The Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission found Rod Blagojevich engaged in a pattern of dishonest and deceptive conduct, and they have stripped him of his law license. It just doesn't stop everybody. Tonight, the Chicago Bulls will be playing the Timberwolves. Chicago Bulls will be playing the Timberwolves. And the Milwaukee Bucks will be playing the Pacers tonight, so we'll be watching for those results tomorrow. And the Blackhawks, Chicago Blackhawks, they were victorious over the Ducks, 6-2. The Dow was down 785 points yesterday. The S&P was down 86 points. The Nasdaq down 268 points. Chicago's expecting a high of 43 degrees. Milwaukee, a high of 40 degrees. And Madison, a high of 41 degrees. Bronco Marcetic, he is going to tell us what he found in his book, Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden. I know everyone wants to talk with him this morning, but you know what? You're coming behind a phone call. We've got a tremendous panel with us who want to hear from you, because we had a phone call from one of our regular listeners who is very upset about Joe Biden. Very upset, Mylan Patton, and attorney C.K. Hoffler and Dwight Mckee, and Latasha Brown, and attorney Robert Patillo. And so, Bronco, take it away. What did you find in this book?
I mean, one of the things that you understand about Biden is that he's not someone with any firm ideological commitments. So he's always kind of blown with, you know, whatever the way the political winds go. At first, when he first ran for Senate in 1972, he was sort of ran this economics populist platform. You know, he was calling out the parties for being controlled by big money. He was saying that there needs to be expansion of Social Security benefits, that millionaires who don't pay taxes are the big problem, and so on and so forth. By 1978, when the political winds had really shifted, at the end of that kind of New Deal consensus that had been around from the 1930s, Biden went with it, and that sort of set the pattern for his entire career, where Biden has really gone with the kind of right-wing consensus that existed in the country roughly from the 80s until now. You know, in the 80s, he was a big... he hated government spending. He actually put forward a spending freeze that targeted Medicare and Social Security that was bigger than what Reagan had put forward. In the 90s, he worked with Republicans to pass welfare reform, to pass NAFTA, to very nearly pass the balanced budget constitutional amendment, which sort of this Republican dream. It was one of the planks of Newt Gingrich's Contract for America that basically would have just forced the government to drastically cut spending everywhere if basically they couldn't balance the budget at the end of a fiscal year. You see this in every facet, not just economics, but also in foreign policy. In the 80s, Biden starts saying we need to be more aggressive in foreign policy. He goes from a dove to a hawk, which is really, he stayed as for the rest of his career, most famously as the chief Democratic architect of the Iraq War. I think people don't realize that, but he wasn't just another vote for the Iraq War. He was key in helping it actually happen, because he was the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, and he held these hearings that he stacked with pro-war voices, didn't include any skeptics of the case that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. He was connected to Al-Qaeda, and then used that testimony to go to the Sunday talk shows and made the case that clearly Saddam has to be taken out. And you see this with civil liberties as well. Biden was, during the 90s, he because of the sort of panic over terrorism, he put forward and supported a number of very regressive measures in civil liberties to gut habeas corpus and the like, which did succeed. And a lot of the stuff that didn't succeed in the 90s ended up being recycled in the Patriot Act in 2001, which Biden initially sort of told everyone, I basically wrote that. That's my bill. And then once, again, the political wind shifted, he sort of tried to disown it. Right now, Biden, it's interesting that he has the support from African-American voters that's kind of catapulted him to the lead now, because Biden's whole case throughout the 1980s and really on is that the Democratic Party is too cares too much about its voters who are basically white, middle-class suburbanites. He was saying in the 80s the Democratic Party is being controlled by, quote, special interests. And what he was meaning by that wasn't the special interests of today when we think of big business and lobbyists and the like. He was meaning African Americans, Latinos, LGBTQ people, the poor, and to some extent labor as well. And he was saying we need to become more like the conservative white South, which was a bedrock of Reagan and other Republican victories. So it's ironic now that a lot of his support, and I think a lot of this comes from this aura of electability he's been given by the media really since he entered the race. But he has this tremendous white support that's really undergirding his entire campaign. You can go on and on. There was his work during the Obama administration to cut a deal with Mitch McConnell to drastically cut spending, including in some of these big programs, Medicare and Social Security. It didn't work. It failed because Republicans were just too obstinate. But Biden was sort of this go-to figure for Mitch McConnell. Whenever he wanted to cut a deal that would give him everything he wanted, basically, Biden would basically just roll over. And that's a big part of Biden's legacy. I make the argument in the book that as the Republican Party has become more and more extreme and moved further and further to the right, Biden's sole method of combating this is really to just try and poach the other side's arguments and platform and adopt it as his own, which is a disaster. I mean, if we think about his role in the erection of the carceral system in the U.S., the mass incarceration that has, ironically, given his African-American support now, really decimated African-American communities across the country. He wasn't, again, just one vote. He was a key figure in it. It was his bill that set up that crack to powder cocaine ratio, that 100-to-1 ratio. It was he that was pushing for the expansion of civil forfeiture, which did happen thanks to one of his bills, and has basically facilitated the decades-long robbery, is not a word for it, by law enforcement of working class Americans, many of them black and brown. And then, that's one element of it, but we could go on and on. Obviously, there's an entire 200-page book that people can read if they really want to get the gory details.
Well, why do you call him, just before you go, you call him yesterday's man? And do you think that if more African Americans, for example, more progressives knew his record, do you think that they would be as enthusiastic about it?
I very much doubt it. I mean, I think we saw in the lead-up to the Iowa caucuses one of the reasons that Biden's favorability went down, his polling went down, was because Sanders started attacking him on his record on Medicare and Social Security. As has been reported, he has a 40-year-long record of trying to cut these programs. And that really ate away at the older support that he has. That's a big part of it, is not just African Americans, but older voters who tend to be a lot more cautious. We forget, but older voters, if you look at the 2008 primary between Clinton and Obama, older voters mostly went for Clinton because there was the narrative that Obama, this is an African American man, he has the middle name Hussein, shock horror, there's no way this guy can ever win, let's go with the safe choice, Hillary Clinton. Of course, voters did not make that decision that year. In 2016, they did, to disastrous results. And it's kind of funny to me that, part of the reason I call him yesterday's man in the book, or at least that's the title of the book, is because he really does present the politics of yesterday, of this sort of cautious centrist liberalism that just seeks to accommodate an increasingly extreme right wing. There's a possibility for a new type of politics at the moment. It's doubtful if Biden, having watched the disaster that unfolded in 2016, the Democrats ran an establishment candidate with basically all of Biden's weaknesses. To repeat that mistake again, and watching it sort of happen in slow motion is quite a thing, I have to say.
I want to thank you for being with us today. I cannot wait to have you back when you don't have all of these interviews back to back to back to back. But I want to thank you for putting us in, because I think it's important for us. We want to have we want our listeners to be informed, and I think that you were speaking to a lot of what Pearl, voicing some of her concerns. Thank you, Bronco Marcetic. And his book is Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden. Blessings to you, and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Okay, before I go to the callers, C.K. Hoffler, what are you hearing? Dwight Mckee, Latasha.
Addresses African American issues. That's how I phrased it. Mm-hmm. But what Chappelle said was she brought it home. She brought it home and then some. She took it all from top to bottom, middle, every way. And then the gentleman that just spoke about his book really filled in the record, if you will, of Joe Biden. For me, the bottom line is today, he needs to have an agenda to address issues of concern to African Americans, Black and brown people. Because nobody's going to have a completely clean record. But I want to know what you're going to do today. And I'm not excusing what you did in the past. I'm not excusing you calling Reverend Jackson Boyd. No one's going to forget that. But you cannot hope to go forward, in my humble impression, and win if you don't have an agenda that addresses issues of concern to the African American community, who are not only saving your campaign, not only keeping you alive in terms of your campaign, they are the ones that will give you the victory. And also, by the way, black women, young and old, will put him in office. So he needs to immediately, not yesterday, the day before, thinking about it, could be now, meet and come up with an agenda. Even Bloomberg has an agenda of issues that concern African Americans. What is this? So I think the frustration is expressed differently based on everybody's perspective. Mine is, what is his agenda for African Americans, the people who will elect him, who can elect him, and who have the power to elect him or not elect him? And I think that's where the discussion needs to be as it relates to Joe Biden.
Let me go to Robert from Wisconsin. Up in Wisconsin, our new home. How you doing, Robert?
Yeah.
It's good hearing your voice. Where are you listening to us from?
Wisconsin.
Oh, but where in Wisconsin, Robert?
Up near the Milwaukee area. I guess I haven't heard everything that the previous person said about Biden's record. I imagine he mentioned the crime bill. Probably mentioned, working with segregation at the post busing. Biden's lied about his record of civil rights. It's all on tape, it's all on video, it's all in comments. These comments he's even made himself. I just do not understand what the appeal is with older voters. He pushed through NAFTA, which we know we lost a lot of jobs up in Wisconsin that disproportionately, impacted people of color when there were layoffs. It always seems that the black folks or the Latino people disproportionately get impacted by that. I'm not sure if the prior contributor also commented on the fact that, Joe Biden also, took Clarence Thomas's word over Anita Hill's word. He also, was involved with rushing through the Bill Barr nomination. So this guy has a very troubling record. I do not understand why older voters in the community there support this man. Is it they're just unaware of what he's done throughout the years? or is it more the association with Barack Obama that they think he represents their interests? Because he has a long track record, but he doesn't. I just don't get it.
Well, no, Robert, hold on. I mean, Dwight, why don't you speak to that, and then you, Latasha, and Robert. I've got about 3 minutes left in the segment.
Well, the issue is not so much that Joe know us, is do we know Joe, is that he, I think what's going to happen is this next debate is they're going to pull the gloves off and begin to expose some of these aspects of Joe's life. If you remember that, the reason that Obama put Joe on the ticket is because he was trying to appeal to that older, conservative, white, reactionary crowd and trying to bring balance, who was intimidated that Obama was super aggressive, too young and too black. And so they brought a quite old white guy in to really kind of stabilize Obama's image. So that's who Joe has always been, is that guy. And his record reflects that. And so we will see if the enthusiasm is maintained once these gloves are taken off and they show who the real Joe Biden is.
Latasha, Robert, does it matter? I mean, some people have said that happened, and I've heard people say that happened in the past, and I'm going to bring you on, Mylan, on the other side of the break. People have said that's happened in the past. Should we? Well, wait a minute. This young man, how old are you, Mylan?
19.
You're 19. And he's, Latasha, Robert, Patillo, attorney Robert Patillo, attorney C.K. Hoffler, Dwight Mckee, Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter. He is at the University of Chicago, and he's been an intern over at Rainbow Push, and a very, very wonderful young man. I've got about a minute left. Are you surprised when you hear Vice President Biden's record, and should it matter now?
Well, I'm not surprised hearing his record. I'm surprised a bit by the results from yesterday. I think in the span of 4 days, he became,
the front runner.
He became a front runner, almost undisputed, and I think that's going to present a lot of talk about whether he can create this coalition, whether he can inspire turnout. As you've seen in South Carolina, 15% is not going to do it.
What about you people your age? I mean, not that you speak for all 19-year-olds,
yes.
But
and you saw in specifically states like California, which are going to be the battleground states which decide this upcoming election. He's getting very, very little turnout, lower than 10%. I mean, very, very little support, lower than 10% in comparison to Senator Sanders and Senator Warren. So he's going to have to do a lot. He cannot expect that all Democrats will coalesce around him. It's a lot to look at.
Latasha, I got about 30 seconds. Let's say you.
Bloomberg, momentum itself does not necessarily mean it's sustainable. They've done this over and over again. The moderate wing of the party has propped Joe Biden up. As soon as he gets an examination of his record and you bring him, he's a forerunner, he falls back. And I think we're going to see the same thing just like Bloomberg. There was all this momentum around Bloomberg. There was a push. He was going to get the black vote. As soon as it was exposed, his record, we saw what happened to him. I think the same thing will happen on some level of Biden. Biden, in some ways, has gotten a free pass with the media. That part of his ascendance yesterday was not based on people supporting him. It was based on that the consolidation of the moderate wing of the Democratic Party put all of their muscle behind him yesterday.
All of it. I'm ready to stay right there. Hold on, back in just a minute.
The history of our America lives here. This is WCPT.
Well, you okay?
Yeah, I'm just my nose real quick.
Oh, no worries. You can step right off camera, dear.
This is Joan Esposito.
But it's cold, everybody. It's cold in the studio. Just so that you know, I'm about to put my scarf right back on, like it was when I first started, because it's cold in here. Cortez, he's the only one who's not sniffling in here.
WCPT radio broadcast. Remember Friday, March 6th from 2 to 5
this is so much better. I'm about to put my hat on.
3657 West 26th Street, corner of 26th and Lawndale in Chicago.
Family is big around here. Family owned, family operated, family managed.
But it's huge. It's so huge.
So what's huge?
That he was able to garner that sort of support in such a short amount of time. You consider, you know, a lot of people early voted, especially Democrats, they early voted. And to see that shift, he was down truly. And then in the span of 4 days.
Well, you see, the media also. The media had a lot to do with that. Because the media have been waiting for him. Anybody else would have been laughed out of the race. But they've been waiting for him.
Chicago traffic updates.
Come on, Joe. You can do it, Joe.
Southwest side, Central Avenue
Come
remains
on,
blocked.
you can do it. You can do it.
And I really do think his electability has to be called into question as far as creating that coalition. You know, the majority of states he won yesterday were in the South. And due to the effects of voter suppression, mass incarceration, he's not going to get the South. He's not going to get South Carolina. South Carolina's going to be comfortably
46 minutes O'Hare to downtown.
Arkansas is going to be comfortably Republican. I don't know if these states are really indicative of
Stevenson, 48 minutes.
Well, do you think that the Democrats are gambling on him being Republican enough? Democratic enough for the Democrats and Republican enough for the Republicans?
I think.
Is that enough for you?
Hear that sound? It's priceless.
I think
because in every heartbeat there's information that could change the way you think about heart health. Heartline is an app-based
well, we don't even know if he's won yet.
In collaboration with Apple.
Now let's not assume you know he had a string of victories yesterday, but we still don't.
For everyone, beat by beat.
You know, this number one, his new position is going to change the nature of the campaign. And Bernie Sanders supporters, and quite frankly, not just his supporters, Warren supporters, the progressive wing of the party is much more vocal now. Because the problems for all Americans is just the problems are much more urgent. So I don't think people are going to have the space that they've had.
I always wanted
the
to
electorate
make a
is
positive
electric
difference in the world.
Because people
now I'm running for judge.
You
Vote
can't
for
get
Deidre
your health
Bauman for
care.
Cook County Circuit
You can't afford to get a test.
March 17th.
Come on. You can't afford to go to college. Your school's about $300,000 a year for an
Deidre Bauman for judge.
In life, there are talkers
Who
and
can
there are
afford that?
doers. Sometimes it's not hard to tell
$100,000 a year for an undergrad?
getting big things done.
I mean, he's part of the team that changed the loan system. So you now have Parent Plus loan. So if you don't have perfect credit, you can't get a loan. Go to school. How am I supposed to, God bless you, how am I supposed to get out of poverty? Or move or keep myself away from poverty or become prosperous if I can't go to school? 30 seconds.
There's a clear choice.
And he's going to be, you know, he's going to have to expand on his plan for everything.
We got John Nichols. Who did we lose? Did we lose CK?
Track record creating jobs. Who's taken on the NRA and won.
Oh, I think she had to go, right? Just check on CK.
Okay. Things done. That's who can beat Trump. That's who we need in the White House.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, candidate for president, and I approve
Coming
this
back
message.
in 10 seconds.
Paid for by Mike Bloomberg 2020.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, streaming live. We have some new homes here. Madison, Wisconsin, 92.7 FM, Talk 92.7 FM, and Milwaukee, Talk 101.7 FM. That's right. You can stream us live on their websites, on talk1017fm.com and on talk927fm.com, and of course on our home station here, WCPT820.com. And if you want to see us, hello, we're live on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook and on the Santita Jackson Show over on YouTube. On Facebook, please like and share, and on YouTube, like and subscribe. We are talking about Super Tuesday and Vice President Biden's record. He said he's an Obama, Biden Democrat, and then we find out that he became a Democrat at 27. We just wonder, well, the race is not over yet, and so before I go back to the rest of the panel and all of these callers, we have a new kid on the block, John Nichols. John Nichols, I'm up there in your home at 92.7 FM, Talk 92.7 FM. One of my favorite guys in the world, John Nichols from The Nation. How you doing?
I'm so glad to be on with you this morning, my dear colleague, sister, and so many things. But I'm even gladder that you're on in Madison.
I can't believe I'm talking to him right now. We love we love him. Well, you know what I mean. To fully disclose, I met John when we were both teenagers. When he just Latasha, he just showed up literally on my parents' doorstep and said, "I want to work for you, Reverend Jackson, on the campaign." My parents were like, "He looks like he could be our child." So, of course, with red hair. Okay, all right, okay, that's okay. Yes, trust me, with black genetics, it can't happen. You know what, John Nichols, what happened yesterday?
A lot happened yesterday. It's a big deal. And the core reality of this is that we got a lesson in how politics operates now. And it means that in the old days, people thought, oh, you got to, build, and you do all sorts of structural things and set up all sorts of stuff. Well, Joe Biden proved that you can essentially have a couple of good days. A South Carolina win that no one should underestimate. It was a big win. Candidates start dropping out, and then on Monday they all endorse him. Not all of them, but a lot. And he gets a tremendous amount of free media. Remember, Joe Biden didn't have a lot of money. Gets a tremendous amount of free media that pivots him into victories in some states where he was going to do well. And remember, in these important southern states, Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, he won those states. Now, some of those places were places where it looked for a while like Mike Bloomberg was going to do well. Bloomberg did himself in and took a little hit from Elizabeth Warren. But there you had those wins. But then for Biden, you got Minnesota, Texas, Maine, it looks like, are a very close race up there. Massachusetts, you start to put all these pieces together. It was a tremendous night for Joe Biden, and it was a night where you got a, kind of a genuine surge, a classic surge. Now, that doesn't mean it's over for Bernie Sanders, but it does mean that this is not a race. If a week ago a lot of people were saying it was a race for Bernie Sanders to lose, this is now a race for Joe Biden to lose.
Well, but what? Before, because I want the panel just you all engage each other. I mean, it seems that nearly 3 in 10 voters decided over the last 3 days. Was South Carolina that important?
Santita, in some states it was way higher than that. We're looking at some states where it was almost as high as 50% of people deciding at the last minute. Do you know what that means? Simplest thing of all. We have a tremendous number of voters who are desperate to get rid of Donald Trump. They want him out. And they have looked at this race from every side. It's been going on now for more than a year. And when they got a big blast of information, the South Carolina win, the other candidates dropping, these endorsements, all of that suggested Joe Biden might be the guy, I think a tremendous number of them said, okay, going for it.
But we're finding out more things about his record, or we're being reminded. How's that going to play? Anita Hill, anti-busing, crime bill. I mean, whoa.
Well, your father ran against him back in 1988. And I remember that race very well. And one thing I will tell you is that I didn't see many articles back then saying that Biden and Jackson were fighting for the left lane. The reality was, and is, that Joe Biden has always been a very centrist and sometimes even a relatively conservative Democrat. That is the truth. That is the reality of his record. However, it is also important to remember that at a critical point in 2008, after Biden's second failed presidential run, Barack Obama looked to him and made him vice president, and made vice presidential running mate, and then vice president of the United States. And I think for a lot of core Democrats, including many progressive Democrats, certainly not all, but many progressive Democrats, that connection with Barack Obama means a lot. And in combination with, endorsements. And remember, I just want to emphasize, the record is the record. It is real, and it's going to come out, and there's going to be a push and a pull. but the contemporary moment has an awful lot of significant figures standing by Biden's side and saying he's a good guy. And so for Democratic voters, they'll wrestle with that in Michigan and Illinois and Florida and Ohio and all the states to come, Arizona. But if Biden continues to do what he's been doing, which is pulling together these significant endorsements, delivering a relatively progressive message in this moment, I think that you have to accept that he has advantages. And for Bernie Sanders, if I can just add one element for Bernie Sanders, at this point, Sanders has two profound responsibilities. And the first is to deliver an electability message. If Sanders can, and I think in many cases he can, if he can talk about how he might be a more electable candidate, I mean, this is the time to do it, right? He needs to communicate that to people, because Biden is winning an awful lot of people on an electability argument. And then the second thing that Sanders has to do is he needs to have a positive message. It can't just be that he's running against everything and everybody. There has to be an element of, for lack of a better term, a joyousness, a hopefulness about it, because when you're going into a fight with Donald Trump, you have to have, a sense that you can win, and B, a sense that, this is something worthy and good and positive. And I think that Sanders can do that. But I do think when you have a night like Sanders had last night, you do have to rethink some of your messages and your strategies.
He does have to recalibrate. Let me go to Teresa. Just very quickly. Teresa, what's on your mind?
Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Teresa.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to say none of them are Obama. Therefore, to me, and I know everybody has a past or whatever, but Biden is the only candidate to me that has a record to run on. They say the economy, Obamacare, and a lot of other things. So, that's all I'm just saying, is that he is one of the few people that does have a record to run on. And if he can bring that same energy, to his, if he wins, that would be wonderful. And I hate to say, when Obama was in office, I could sleep at night. And I'm sure Obama will be in his ear, and it will bring, hopefully, if he wins this election, he will bring that same kind of energy. I like all the other candidates, but this is what stands out to me about Biden.
His association with President Obama, you're saying?
Not just his association. He was the vice president during, Obamacare, and when he saved the economy, therefore saving the world.
Well, let me ask you this: Does it bother you at all, or what do you think? And I want to prejudice your response. Does it, when at a time when America was fighting to desegregate the public schools, and busing was the conservative remedy, he was against that. Does that? How do you feel about that? Because he's never. And now our schools are more segregated than they've been in 50 years, and he's not pushed back against that against that position. What do you think?
That hopefully, he changed.
Well, no, but let me ask you this: do you think that should be a question that should be asked before? In order for him to earn your vote, right? Because I think that this is not about slamming anyone. I think that though, you need to look at people's records, and we need to have the maturity to respectfully ask people about their records, because it's our children, black and brown children in particular, and poor white children. We see the Department of Education has just withdrawn funds from these white kids in these rural areas. Yeah, it's horrible.
Right, it is, and I understand that, but I'm just saying, literally and factually, is that he stands out from everybody else because he was part of one of the most greatest administration in the history of America, to me. And what I'm saying, so maybe he learned something.
Well, but I think I will respectfully, Ms. Teresa, I think you need something even more definitive than that. Don't guess when you're going into the booth. If for someone who gets close to him, you should ask them to ask him. You know.
Talk is cheap. And, everybody want to talk, want to, campaign and say what we want to hear and everything. But all I'm just saying is that, factually.
But these are the facts, Miss Teresa. I'm just saying these are facts, right? This is part of his record, not only the Obama years, but because the Obama years, there were some things that they would like to have done better. But because like the Parent Plus loans, where you need to have perfect credit, we lost 28 to 40,000 students in black colleges because of that. Yeah, that's part of the public record.
Making a point because it's I know he's so cautious about running on his vice president record. And I'm at this point I don't know who I'm for, but I'm just stating that situation, and like Gore didn't want to have anything to do with Clinton, even because of what he went through, and Biden is not bringing up one of the the best. It's just a whole different energy that him and Barack had, and he don't want to talk about it, but the whole world was in a different place when they were in office. That's all I'm just saying.
Okay, Miss Teresa, and make sure you vote and get everybody around you to vote. Sending you much love. Let me get a couple of other callers in so that absolutely, because I want my panel to respond to the callers. Verlon, what's on your mind today?
How you doing, Santita?
Great, hon. Just very quickly.
Yes. I want to say, listen. Finally, a progressive caller has called in and spoke the truth and told me like it is. And I don't have anything else to add to what Shapiro had to say, but you go, girl. Now, my statement today is real short and sweet. I want to see Bernie Sanders become the nominee of your party, not because I want to see him be president. It's because I want a true test of this country. I want to see if the needle has moved towards socialism or if we're still a capitalist country. And that's all I was going to say, but this last caller showed me what I've been saying to you all forever. Black people by the majority is still in the pocket of the Democrat Party, and they vote for anybody that the Democrat Party...
Verlon, honey, historically that's not true. It was a huge, huge, huge thing for Dr. King's father to not vote as a Republican and vote for the Democrats in 1960. Black people have voted our interest, and when the Republicans were with us in ending slavery, we voted with them. But when they were not with us in achieving equality, we had to leave them. So that's not. Please don't play black people cheaply. That's not fair. It's just not true. And unless you go into the Republican den and confront them on their racism and on this policy, for example, that is going to take money from rural schools, you have nothing to say to me, because you're not. You're willing. No. Confront the mess underneath your tent. I'm not saying you can't criticize what's happening over here, but you need to be able to. No. That I'm asking you a simple question. Are you willing to go to the Republican Party and confront them on the Southern strategy? Are you willing to go to the Republican Party and confront them on withdrawing monies from these kids in these rural poor areas? Are you willing to? There's a whole ... I'm tired of hearing everybody pick on the Democrats, and I got my own problems with them.
Ronald Reagan or how Ronald...
Honey, you can confront them right now, just right here. Betsy DeVos, honey, just calm down a little bit. John Nichols, why don't you respond to Verlon? I love you, Verlon, but gotta put a little bit of ice in that hot coffee.
One question before I'm going. I just want to say, why would black people vote as a majority for Joe Biden after everything Shapiro just said?
Why would you vote for Trump? Silence? Really? No, he's not. Get Verlon, hush. John Nichols responded to it, but help. Where is your... I hope you have that balm in Gilead to help him. Come on. What?
I'm always looking for it. So let me offer one thing as somebody who's covered a lot of politics for a long time. African American voters in this country are the most sophisticated voters. They look at elections very, very seriously, and they make choices based on the circumstance they're in and what they think can be achieved. Now, other voters do that. There's no question. But it's funny. I was just have a book coming out in May about a lot of politics, and one of the most remarkable stories in the book is of how from the mid-1930s on, African American voters who had been Republican voters, very solidly Republican voters in the North where they could vote, shifted to the Democratic Party. They became very strong supporters of Franklin Roosevelt. In the Harry Truman campaign, they were very important supporters for arguably elected Truman in '48. And then the Democrats kind of strayed back toward respecting or accepting their segregationist wing. And in 1956, Adam Clayton Powell, the Democratic congressman from Harlem, and a number of Democratic elected officials African American Democratic elected officials from across the country said the Democrats are not doing enough on civil rights. They met with Dwight Eisenhower, and Eisenhower said, I'll do more. And they went out and they campaigned for a Republican. And Eisenhower got a very large, in some states, in some areas, even, getting toward a majority of the African American vote. And the next year, in 1957, Eisenhower moved and supported the Civil Rights Act of 1957, a breakthrough piece of legislation, not enough, but an important one. And it is vital to understand, I only tell that little story, to tell you that there's so much nuance and depth to the history of the African American vote in this country, where it goes, what it does, and we need to remember that history because as we go into this important year, it is vital for candidates to appeal to the African American community, to reach out and to understand that this is a voting bloc. Now, obviously within it there are distinctions and disagreements, but this is a voting bloc that has the ability to make presidents, but also has the ability to move policy in fundamental ways. And so that's just my, for what it's worth, I think that is the vital thing to remember, and not to try and suggest that African American voters are somehow less than the vital force that they are.
Absolutely, and as if we're unthinking, uncritically, unthinking voters. I mean, black people think critically. Absolutely, and I'm going to come to you last. Well, Mylan, you jump on in.
Yeah, a question for you, Mr. Nichols. I've kind of been grappling with the concept that Super Tuesday has done a great deal to prove Vice President Biden's electability, especially when looking at these southern states where, due to the effects of voter suppression, voter oppression, and mass incarceration, they're most likely going to go Republican. And with this delegate system that we have in the primaries, which is not indicative of the delegate system that we have in the general elections as far as, proportional representation or viability, that's going to prove very costly, I feel, for Democrats who place their stakes on winning the South.
Well, look. So you're just very quickly, yes, Latasha?
So there are a couple of things that I just want to say quickly. I think we have to be really careful. While I am deeply kind of disappointed in the outcomes, we have to be very careful about how we talk about black voters and black voters that voted for Biden. I think we've got to be critical around a couple of things. The first thing is that on some level there is a distrust for white liberals, and oftentimes that when we have aligned with a white liberal agenda, it is not necessarily centered on some of the issues or the needs of black progressives. One of the critiques of the Bernie campaign consistently has been his inability to really speak to race and his inability to be able to make black folks feel comfortable that our issues would not be secondary in that process. And that's just the truth. And whether people see that one way or the other, that has been a consistent critique of his campaign. So one, I think that there are three big pieces. I'll just say quickly. One, we know we can't, on some level, most black folks don't feel like they can trust white folks to support a progressive candidate, and that we can't take the risk of losing to Trump. I think that that's one. Two, I think that the source of our fear, particularly those of us that live in the South, we know what
the rise of white nationalists, we know what that means. And so that is a very, very real fear for us. And that's as it should be, and I think as it is in many of our communities. And so we know what it means when white nationalists are given more power. We know that the outcome for us, and that is real for us. And so I think that's a consideration, which leads me to my third point, that when you're in an environment of fear, the only way that you can get people to move beyond that is you've got to give them a deeper sense of hope. And the truth of the matter is none of the candidates, including the candidates I support, none of the candidates have been able to articulate a message that makes black people feel like they have a greater sense of hope, that hope that can offset the real fear that we have around the rise of white supremacy. And so I think, given all of those three circumstances, I think we see what we saw yesterday. You know, and I think part of it we also have to factor in that there was a concerted effort by the moderate and the centrist wing of the party to consolidate their support and power around Biden. That had an impact as well. So,
you know, and it makes many of us who are observing closely, or even, you know, if we are not even adjacent to the process, it makes you it makes you suspicious. You know, I wish I could give everybody a closing thought, but if you can stay with me on Facebook for just a couple of minutes after we get off the air, I would love to do that. John Nichols, I know you're going to have to run. I'm going to give the final minute to you. What should we, where do we go from here? For those of us who are progressives, and I'm straight up. I'm a Warren Sanders progressive, originally a Jesse-crat, right? So help me.
I think the Jesse-crat's where it's at. And look, you go on. You win, you lose. One of the important things to remember, and I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of history here, I'll just tell you that we're coming up on the anniversary of Super Tuesday in 1988, where Jesse Jackson swept these southern states, won a whole bunch of them. It was a huge breakthrough win for the Rainbow Coalition message. And then he went on and he lost in a bunch of places. He had his ups and downs. And you carry on for two reasons. One, you carry on because you never know where the wind may come. And remember that winds do come in places like Michigan, perhaps, or in other spots. But two, you carry on because you want to take that deeper message into our politics. And you want to take it all the way to the convention. And Santita, you were there. You heard your father's speech in 1988. You know how important that was for framing out our politics going forward. And so for progressives who may feel a little disheartened today, my message is a simple one. Stick with what you believe in. Go for it. Fight for it. Not to tear anybody else down, but because it's a message that has to be about a part of our politics through the rest of this campaign, going into the convention, and frankly, going into that campaign that defeats Donald Trump.
You know, and I think that you said it, because at the end of the day, we're only going to get better together. We have to rise together. Those of us who support Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. Yes, I said that. Wherever it is, rising tides lift all boats. And we need to come up together. And we need to agree to disagree. We need to do it respectfully and lovingly. And for heaven's sake, everybody, look at the records. And when you get the opportunity to speak to the candidates, or if you have someone you know who can speak to the candidates, press them, but press them respectfully, so that you can get not just who you want, but what you need. You have too many people hungry in America today. People cannot go to the doctor. Many people are suffering, and in the wealthiest country in the history of mankind, that should not be. So everybody, Milwaukee, Madison, that's right, and Chicago, and everybody around the world, God bless you. See you tomorrow. Okay, let's do this quickly.
Hey, where's Hal Sparks? I'm not sure where he is now,
quickly,
but I know where you can find him Saturdays at 11. He'll be right here on WCPT 820. The Hal Sparks Radio Program, Mega Worldwide.
So it's a little bit more loosey-goosey here. So,
do you have a house or two flat you'd like to sell quickly? Then call URB Chicago. Get an immediate cash offer and receive your check in as little as 7 days. No need to make repairs, no brokers or real estate commissions. Get a market-based, hassle-free cash offer on the spot. URBChicago.com is the area's oldest direct buyer real estate.
And I know John's going to have
even
to ask
properties that
Patillo
are
and
boarded up
Dwight
have
if they can
tax liens
stay.
or building
Okay.
code issues. Stop worrying about bad tenants, high payments,
Oh,
or
we have to
even
wait for this to be
repairs you
okay?
can't
make
afford.
sure he
If you own a
switches
house,
properly.
apartment
Okay.
building, or even
But can we speak
commercial
to them
real estate
before
in
they-
rough
before they go?
condition,
Can we speak to
URBchicago.com
Robert
gives
and
you a
Dwight before they
fast
go?
way to sell at
Yeah,
a fair market value. Call URB Chicago
top
right
of the
now
hour,
at
I will.
847-673-7575. That's
Okay.
847-673-7575. Or visit
Well, it was another wonderful panel.
urbchicago.com.
I'm glad you were here for it.
Yes.
We got to come back and do it.
Absolutely. I would love to.
You're more than
I'll get here. I'll
welcome.
get here a little bit earlier next time.
Honey, you know you're more than welcome to be a part because I would love to have some more young people be a part of the show.
This is
Okay.
News.
You want to speak with Robert
Joe
and
Biden
Dwight?
won 9 states on Super Tuesday.
Hey, Dwight, hold on for the after show. Or can you hold on?
Bernie
I
Sanders
appreciate
won
it.
4
Thank you. Hold
states,
on.
including the big prize, California.
He's going to certainly have to prove something.
Hello, surprise.
People aren't just going to turn out.
Patillo, are you able to?
So what do you
put
say?
me on for the after
You're
show?
seeing that people are not just going to turn out because he's Democrat.
That's not going to
Okay.
happen.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Joe Biden's Super Tuesday surge has, at least for now, given him a
You
sizable
go,
lead
girl.
over Bernie Sanders in the delegate count.
You go, girl.
We're
You
gonna
know
pull-
your name is going to go on the ballot.
No,
I don't care.
we're going to pull that today, and that we're tweeting it out.
I wrote the time.
And we're tweeting it out.
I got
Tweeting
it.
out.
Hold up.
California has a whopping 415
Oh,
delegates
That
in
was
all,
freaking
and only
good.
108 have been allocated to this point.
just
Hello,
love you
Tim.
all.
How are you? Hold on, okay?
Still in the race. Elizabeth
No.
Warren
Thank
has
you. Good
50
morning.
delegates.
Tim, so he can say, don't
Bloomberg
beat me up. The
44,
people beat me up. Then he wants to get
Congresswoman
beaten up.
Tulsi
Tim,
Gabbard
just
won.
Roosevelt,
The
good
magic
morning.
number to
Hold on,
secure
I'm gonna
nomination
bring you up,
ahead of the
okay?
convention is 1,991. Ben Thomas, Washington.
Today, Mike Bloomberg is
Put my phone on charge real quick.
Oh, honey, you know you can put it. You can plug it in over here.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, they're all up.
Oh boy. Okay, so let me go right to. You all are so sweet, Attorney Robert Patillo and Dwight Mckee. Thank you so much for staying with us for a little while. You know, we're doing a lot of adjusting as we move into these different markets. Because we're actually not just in Milwaukee and Madison. We're in 2 other markets. So we're now in 5 cities and towns, which is great. So you know what? Let him plug that up. Get on over here, Mylan Patton, and let us get to the show because Chappelle called back, of course. Dwight Mckee. Dwight Mckee. We put our men on mute for a hot second. Dwight Mckee and Robert Patillo. What have you heard today, Dwight Mckee? Did I hear you laughing, Dwight?
Yeah, you did.
Why?
I heard aspiration, I heard frustration, I heard, hopes, and I heard fears. It's, I think that it seems to be a whole faction of the black, of the black community who is really responding to reflex rather than information. And they associate Biden with Obama, not understanding that Biden was on the ego to Obama. He wasn't a parallel to Obama. The goal of putting Biden on that ticket was to bring balance to Obama. It was not because Biden represented what Obama represented. It was because he represented a counterpoint to what Obama represented. And they were trying to make sure they locked that white conservative base down. And Biden was the perfect guy for that. And so it made him a good accomplice to Obama, but I think running on his own record is going to create a problem for him. If he is exposed and if he becomes a target of these next debates, and if Elizabeth goes after him and decapitates him like she did Bloomberg. Bloomberg was all of that in a bag of chips until Elizabeth Warren pulled the covers off of it. And I think Biden has that same vulnerability for this next debate.
Robert Patillo?
Well, what I haven't heard coming out of Super Tuesday is Bernie supporters taking responsibility for the deficiencies of Bernie's campaign. That I've heard blame on every side except for to the candidate himself. Even right now on Twitter, rigged primary is trending among Bernie supporters. Joe Biden has been declaring Joe Biden for the last 50 years. It's his competitor's job to bring these things out. We remember when Kamala Harris brought the busing issue up at one of the debates. We had the Hunter Biden and Russiagate situation. President Trump was willing to get impeached and indeed send his associates to prison to try to bring down Joe Biden. But particularly in the South, we did not see Bernie running ads on the parts of Biden's record that we highlighted. We didn't see Bernie going on a direct attack. He tried to do the inevitability above the fray, not get his hands dirty during the debates or in advertising, and we see what he got out of it. So I don't think we can do any proper post-mortem of Super Tuesday without looking at the Sanders campaign apparatus and structure. They had all the money they needed. I think it was $46 million just in the last period of time. So I think it's important that we be for real about the deficiencies of the Sanders campaign.
Okay. Well, absolutely. Let me go to Roosevelt. What's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita. Thank you for taking my call. Okay,
Okay, Chaparral, we can hear you in the background. Oh, okay. Roosevelt, go on.
In my opinion, the way I saw it last night, we have to give credit where credit is due, and that is James Clyburn resuscitated Biden's election last night and sweep because of Clyburn. I think the rest of the southern states followed suit. Particularly in the African American community. If you notice that most of the states, if not all the states, about 50%, Biden got the African American vote. That's due, in my opinion, to having the endorsement of Beto in Texas. That's due to having the endorsement of the two that dropped off, the Mayor Pete and whatever lady. Think of her name, but that coupled with Clyburn, I think it's what carried all those states. That being said, I'm still sticking to my prediction. I believe Bernie Sanders is gonna get the nomination because of this coronavirus. People act when there's a lot of fear, and this is gonna cause fear. And Bernie has promised health care for everybody and all that, and education and all that. But I also wanted to say, in particular, when it comes down to people like Verlon or Mitchell and all those guys that call in and say who they want as a candidate, they have no credibility in our station, 820, because in their own party, they have a mess because Trump is putting the pressure on all Republicans not to be primary. He's running the thing like a dictator. He's running his re-election like a dictator. He gave orders to all the Republican governors not to have anybody primary him. So, Verlon, whenever you want to talk about the Democratic Party, and I know why you want Bernie Sanders, because that's exactly what Trump wants. Because that's exactly what Russia wants.
Actually, Roosevelt, the data has shown that the person, and there was a report that came out that said this, that Trump is the most electable candidate against Bernie Sanders is the most electable candidate. That's what the data is showing. And Trump, according to a New York Times piece, said he's the person I fear the most because it's very hard to run against a movement.
Santita, we can't depend on what Trump says because anything that Trump has touched in his lifetime has turned into you know what. So whatever his strategy is strictly his own belief. meaning he's always wrong. Look at the way he's handling coronavirus. He hasn't done anything. There's
I got you, but let's get back to Super Tuesday, honey. Let's get back to that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So back to Super Tuesday, I believe, like you said, the Latino vote in Nevada went for Bernie, Colorado, and somewhat Texas.
And California.
And California, yes. But that's due to the fact that there's, notice, all those three states, there's a lot of young people in those states, a lot of universities, and the way I saw it last night, there were lines, and that's a shame. You mentioned it briefly. That's a shame that in the state of Texas, it's so hard for young people to vote. There were lines of young people, such as college age, waiting 2 or 3 hours.
Well, you know, let me see. I wanted to switch things over, so I want to stay on topic with Super Tuesday, because the fact is they closed polling places in black and brown communities. They've done that, and they did it in the state of Texas. They're doing it everywhere, but particularly in Texas. Let me go to you, Jim. What's on your mind? Is this Jim or Tim?
No, it's.
Okay, hey, Tim.
Okay, I don't think that Bernie Sanders had a chance in Texas, no matter who was running, no matter who supported Biden. I don't think Texas is going to embrace socialism. But that being said,
he's not, honey, he's not a socialist. He said he calls himself a democratic socialist, but he's really an FDR Democrat. He's fulfilling the New Deal. Okay, he's not. It's people. It's just not true.
So that being said, when I try to put my children through college, I have to find out how much it's going to cost me to put my kids in college, my 2 children. And Bernie Sanders wants me to put 47 million children through college. And I just want to know from the progressives on this show right now, how much of my check, whether I work in a horse ranch in Wyoming or a office job in the Loop, how much of my paycheck is going to be taken away from me for all the free stuff that we're giving everybody?
But none of this stuff is free. Wait a minute, Tim. In other countries all around the world, no, hold on. In countries all around the world, they invest in their children and they send them to school. They send them to school. I mean, I don't see you jumping up and down raising Cain when Wall Street comes for your check. They came for your check in 2008 and demanded it, as a matter of fact. And they said, if you don't give us your money, Tim, Santita, Mylan, you weren't working yet, we're going to crash the economy. Now, I wish you'd have the same sense of have the same sense of everybody talks about. We reward greed, and when they mess up, we say, you know what, we're going to pay for it. But when we talk about trying to fulfill other people's needs, and we need educated people in America. Everybody's saying, oh, it's going to cost too much. It costs too much to have people who are uneducated or undereducated. That is costly too. It's ridiculous.
Tim and Miss Santita, I do feel like this is a fear that President Trump is going to be able to tap in. Well, I mean, nevertheless, I think this is a talking point that President Trump will be able to tap into come the general election.
Yeah, someone who can pay for Tim's. He can pay for your school. He can pay for everybody's schooling. Now, all these people who have
74% of your check for all their Social Security or their security safety tax.
Yeah, but I think that's not the full picture, though. People are fully insured by health care. Yes, but I think you have to look at the totality of it, not arguing for or against it, but I think that's an element of fear that's not looking at the totality of the argument. I think you have to look at the whole case.
Today.
Well, because everybody doesn't get 3/4 of their income taken from them. You have to be at the highest level of money making, because that's what happens over in the UK. Because I have a lot of friends in the UK, and some of whom make a lot of money, and the more money they make, the way it used to be during the Kennedy administration in the United States, you had a much higher tax rate. It is Reagan who busted that. And he got us accustomed to wealthy people. And you know what? I'm not wealthy. I don't know if you are. But wealthy people don't pay. Middle class people pay. No, that's not Bernie's stuff. No, it's not Bernie stuff. It's not Bernie stuff, and you need to stop that. You really, really do. You need to stop it. But let me bring on Chapearl. Chapearl, what's on your mind? And why did you call back? Oh my God.
I'm still hot. I'm still mad.
Good.
First, I want to address Attorney Patillo and his analysis of Bernie's campaign. I agree. Bernie needs to strengthen his ground game. I think that's where he failed, getting out the vote. But we cannot discredit what actually happened with the DNC and their concerted effort to coalesce around Biden. We cannot say that, so when people are on Twitter, and I just want a fair process. And when we see that this process is unfair to a progressive, this is not cool with me. It don't sit well with me. And Bernie was not my first choice. But he probably will get my vote because of the fact that I want to prove that there are more people who understand the policies as opposed to the feel-good moment for Joe Biden. My thing as well is that what is Biden offering? What plan has he put forth? This man has literally said nothing. Only thing he can say, just like he was talking about Giuliani, talking about 9/11, all he's been talking about is I'm Obama's VP. Y'all gotta get real and understand this man has not presented anything to America, let alone Black America. But he has not presented not one plan to America about what will you do other than beat Trump. Come on now. And I hear everybody sitting up here saying that this is acceptable. When we have major things that need to happen, we have 62 million people uninsured or underinsured in America. So when you have these epidemics like the coronavirus, okay, if they ain't got no health care and they don't have access to health care, so that's how that spreads. All these homeless people that are on the street, that's how this continues to spread. And then you have others who are saying, vote Joe, vote Joe. So what? I'm just trying to figure out. I'm just like so confused. Like, why are we voting Joe? What is Joe going to do for us? And they keep on saying, well, he can beat Trump. And we don't want 4 years of Trump. Guess what? We will survive. I was sad when Bush won. I was sad when Trump won. I'm be sad when Joe wins. I want to know what you're going to do for me. How is my life going to change by having a centrist right Democrat in office? Both parties support corporate interests. And that means that the little people in America won't get anything. And so when I hear all these Black pundits telling me that I need to fall in line and vote Joe Biden, I will say again, hell no, I'm not voting for Joe.
Okay. So, anyone want to respond? Dwight, Robert?
I think since I got mentioned, I never said fall in line and vote for Joe. What I said is just going forward, you have two candidates who are very close in delegates currently, and about halfway through the race. So you have to do a post-mortem of what happened and why Super Tuesday went so badly. Why did you lose 10 out of the 14 primaries yesterday? Why have you lost 11 of the first 18 primaries, maybe 12 of the first 18 primaries, depending on how we allocate Iowa? And so we can yell at people who disagree with us, and that's not bringing a single person to your side of the movement. That's not getting no one. You're not going to walk up to anybody and say, "You Sambos are rigging the party for against Bernie," and then that person turns around and says, "Like, no, you're right. I'm going to go to your side of the aisle." You have to make the compelling point, and Bernie has not done that, and it's important to figure out why. Why is it that even though Bernie's been running for president since 2015, he still has not made inroads with the African-American community in the South? He's running on the legacy of Jesse Jackson in 84 and 88, but will not give Jesse Jackson credit for the legacy that he's running on. You can read campaign literature from '84, and it looks like Bernie Sanders literature from 2020, but he will not give credit to that. Maybe that will help you in the South. He did not show up at the Edmund Pettus Bridge or in Selma. He was in California during that period of time when all the other candidates were there. So when you lose 63%, when Joe Biden gets 63% of Alabama, you can't blame the Democratic establishment when you did not show up the last weekend of the campaign where you knew you needed to be at. So we can yell and be upset and talk about revolution and all of Bernie's ideas, but there are mechanics to a campaign. You have to take the steps and understand what needs to be done. And if you want to have, if Bernie wants to have success going forward and either take this to a convention fight or win it straight out, then you have to make the adjustments on the fly to ensure that you don't have another repeat of what happened yesterday.
Now, Attorney Patillo, I agree with that sentiment 1,000%. That he definitely needs a better ground game. He needs to collect people who have been through this process with him, and you know, he needs to bring more people and widen his approach. I agree with that. My point again, yes.
Chappelle?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Chappelle, this is Roosevelt. Chappelle, if I may, I usually agree with you 99% of the time. On this one, I disagree. Let me tell you why. This administration, during the break, they're gutting our education. They're gutting everything that Trump set in motion, our air, our water. So if you want to compare, which you are, comparing Joe Biden to Trump, and you say you're going to survive, I don't think we can survive. He's gutting our Constitution. He's gutting everything. He's laughing at us. Look what he's doing. And to the gentleman that said, who's going to pay for Bernie's freebies? Well, who's going to pay for the wars that Bush started? Who's going to pay for the permanent tax cuts that this man put in place for the rich, for the 1%, and us as middle class? Temporary tax cuts. What does that tell you? Who's going to pay for the
Roosevelt?
If I may,
under Obama, black folks lost 90% of their wealth.
But
under Obama, listen, Roosevelt, we lost over 1,000 seats. See, this setup has been happening for over a decade.
No, one at a time. Let her finish, and then you jump in.
This setup has been happening for over a decade because Obama cared about Obama. He made sure that he was reelected, but he didn't think about anything down ballot. So when I hear Democrats sitting up here talking about stuff, if Bernie wins the down ballot, no, baby, it was already lost when Obama. Now we try to clean up his mess, and that's why we have Trump able to run the table with all these judges being elected. That's why we have these problems with the unsecure, because the Democrats, when they had the power, they didn't run the damn table. So don't sit here and tell me, oh, I got to sit up here and vote blue. No, I'm not saying vote blue and then putting Biden in office for a person that's centrist right. You have to tell the truth about who this man is. He is a centrist right Democrat, meaning that he's more aligned with Republicans than he is with us. So when y'all figure out what y'all going to be getting, I want you to be clear on what you're getting when you get a Biden elected. This is not something that's going to be better for us because his ideology is aligned with Republicans. And when I see people telling us that we should forget about his past, no, I'm not going to forget. And don't tell me to forget. Don't tell me to forget, because I had to go through that housing crisis and almost lost my house. I had to go through that crisis. I had to go through the point when they bailed out the banks, and the banks were supposed to bail out the people. When we asked and we pleaded with Obama to save Fannie and Freddie Mac customers, and he didn't. But he gave all that money to the banks. So the banks got a double payout.
Chappelle, I think you got So, Pearl, I think you got sidetracked here, because that happened under Bush, not under Obama. Okay. Second.
No, those things did have no. Roosevelt, they did happen under President Obama. Wait a minute, let me let Dwight jump in here. Dwight.
No. That happened under Bush, no.
It was in a continuum. It was in a continuum.
Right.
That's not true.
But if I may say one more thing.
No, hold on. I want you, because we're going to take this piece by piece. Dwight?
Let him go.
Okay, go on, Roosevelt, and then Dwight, you respond.
We can't lay this on Obama. He didn't have the Congress. When Obama got in there, within the first week, they said they weren't going to work with him. He had an all-Republican Congress. So we can't lay it Obama, because Obama didn't have nothing to do with it, because his hands were tied by the Senate and the House of Representatives. Let's get our facts straight. This started the banks. We bailed out the banks. You just said it, Santita. We bailed out the banks. The little people bailed out the guys that have all the money all in the bank. So that started under Bush. It continued under Obama because his hands were.
But no. You just said it. It continued under Obama. No, because they were not tied the first 2 years. Roosevelt, calm down, Dwight.
What Obama had was Geithner. His dad happened in the Treasury Department, and Obama put Geithner in, and who was a lackey of Goldman Sachs. And they are the ones that gave us the money. And also, under the guise of, it started out that the money was put aside in order to save these houses. It ended up the money went to pay the bonuses for the Wall Street crowd. And nobody, including Obama, raised the skill of how much of that money that the average homeowner who had been robbed was to get back. That was Obama indictment, dog.
Well, now that we have gotten that clear, you know what? No, it's just true. These are just facts. And the only way that you can get things right, Roosevelt and Chaparral and Jim and Robert and Milan and Dwight, is to put the whole truth out there. You put it out there, and then you let the sun hit it, and it bakes out that which does not belong, which is unhealthy. Okay, nobody's perfect. Nobody is perfect. And President Obama was more conservative than many of us thought he was going to be. He was more centrist than many of us thought he was going to be. I think that if we knew that, we would have known how to negotiate with him much, much better. We didn't know that, and then when we found out, I think we were correctly trying to keep him protected. But but we also lost a lot. That is, we lost a lot of our own protections. And going forward, we cannot let that happen again. That's all. It doesn't mean that you don't like Obama. It doesn't mean you're trying to attack him. But there's some things that he could have done better. And I think that if we do not acknowledge that, we'll never get out of the hole that we're in. Roosevelt, it is about, I keep saying this, but I was so shocked when I saw it. It's because Columbia and Stanford and the University of Chicago are about to be $100,000 a year for an undergraduate. You have the Parent Plus loan system, which was instituted by the Obama administration, by the former head of our public schools, Arne Duncan. You have to have perfect credit in order to get a student loan. We lost 28,000 to 40,000 students in HBCUs because of that plan. Now, I mean, that's wrong. And we have to be able to call this stuff out so we can get out of the mess that we're in, because we're in a mess. We are in a mess. We're in a mess. I just happen to agree with Pearl. I'm tired of the centrist Democrats, because they are really right-wing Republicans. That is what they are. That's what they are. You know what? The DLC, the Democratic Leadership Council, which Reverend Jackson called the Democrats for a leisure class, they were formed to be the counterbalance. Not to the counterbalance. They said that if they were not successful in overtaking the party, they came into being in 1984. They said if they were not successful in overtaking the party, after Reverend Jackson had registered 2.5 million voters into the party, he'd expanded the party by 2.5 million people. They said if we're not successful, we're going to leave the party and become Republicans. That's real. Those are facts. And all they've tried to do, they stayed in the party and they just kept moving the party to the right and moving them away from the interest of the people. And people are tired of that. I'm tired of it. And the only way we're going to be able to, the only way that we're all going to be able to get this right is to concede that that is what happened. Period. When you hear Chappelle's frustrations, I know Chappelle. She's got 2 daughters in college right now. She got 4 other kids. She got to figure out how to get through school. And okay then. So when we're talking, we're trying to save people, not trying to save us. That's crazy. Now, I didn't say a perfect candidate. What I'm saying, what you have to do with all of these candidates, Roosevelt, is look at who they are, look at who they've been, so that you can get to where you get from them what you need. Not sitting around here acting as if this man did not oppose busing. He opposed busing. No, wait a minute. And for me, that is profoundly offensive. Profoundly offensive. And he needs to be asked about it. Like you need to ask Bernie Sanders, okay, why'd you vote for the crime bill? What happened here? Even though he has some regrets about it, I'm not going to say I'm not going to say I won't vote for you on that. But I'm going to say, I'm going to ask you about it. But he has to be asked about Anita Hill. We got Clarence Thomas from him. He gave him cover. And he went on to the Supreme Court. This man has done damage that it will take a century darn near to undo. Now you gotta, these are the facts. The right, I mean, if you looked at the media last night, they were giddy. That this man, that Bernie Sanders, that progressives, more than that, progressives didn't run the tables. Because they protect corporate interest. That's what they do. Period. These are facts. Facts. And let's deal with the facts. And before you get who you want, don't fall in love with any candidate. This is not a date. This is a destination. Where are you trying to go? What question do you have to ask?
So I want to make a statement. My candidate.
No, you said you wanted to ask a question. Ask the question.
My question is this: then why did Jim Claiborne support him, and why did he say he knows us, meaning the African?
I don't care. Let me tell you something. That's the most tired trope I've ever heard. I'm tired of people hearing about someone's heart. I'm tired about hearing about someone who knows us. Dwight, you just made the point. Yeah, he might know us. Everybody studied black people and brown people and poor people. But do we know them? That's the question. And why are we afraid of knowing people and finding out and knowing and recognizing what we find? As Dwight, you made the point, Dwight, he was a counterweight to President Obama. He wasn't the parallel, he was the opposite. And people don't even understand that. They don't realize that. That he has always been to the right of our politics. He always has been. No, I'm sorry, Dwight?
For balance. And they brought him in for balance. They didn't bring him in because he reflected what Obama believed in. They brought him in because they were trying to play to constituency that Obama didn't play to, which is conservative white men to say, hey, Obama is not, this is the string to Obama's kite. He is not going to get us so far out there because we got Biden to reel him back. So you all can sleep at night, not because Obama's in the White House, it's because Biden is next door with a string around his kite, so he is not going to fly but so far out there. You can be assured of that. That was the politics of Biden being the vice president.
Okay. So I mean, and so we need another kind of politics because we cannot afford. It keeps getting worse and worse for Americans. Every time I see, I'm a fan of HGTV, and Robert Patillo and Dwight and Chappelle and Roosevelt and Tim and Milan. You know, my mother said, you know, why are people fascinated with this tiny house? I said, well, you know, it's, you know, people, you know, want to downsize. But she looked at me like I was crazy. She said, these people are living in trailers and they do not own land. Has it gotten that bad in America? And have I missed something? Did you miss something here? You know, my mother, she keeps it 100 at all times. She said, what have you missed? They are going to move from park to park They have no place to live. She said, where will they get their mail? What? This is where Americans are. Americans cannot afford to pay rent in the cities in which they work. This is unacceptable. I have not heard Biden talk about that. I just heard him talk about how, look, he's had some tragedy in his life, and there's no question about that, and God bless him, because I cannot imagine. It's like he keeps getting the blows, and he keeps surviving, and I respect and admire that. But that is not enough for me to vote for you. That should not be your speech. Because other folks are taking body blows too, they cannot afford to pay for a burial.
I think that different kind of politics is something that Senator Warren has really personified to me. I think, she doing these selfies, going in these rooms, small rooms with people, she is running a different kind of campaign on the emotional as well as educational sense. She has a plan for literally everything. So it was very disappointing to see her falter and get third place even in her home state yesterday evening, and then that's going to prove very costly to see if she pulls out what will become of her votes as well as Bloomberg's votes, and what will become of his money rather. And he spent out millions upon millions to win the American Samoa. That was very shocking. I'm sure he's very upset.
Well, I'm hoping she'll stay in, because you know what, she is a fierce debater. And I think she's going to bring a lot of things out, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, she will thrive. I know she will thrive. Yeah. Whatever position she.
Because remember, the progressives wanted her to run in 2016, and I think that she did not want to run against Hillary Clinton, and I can appreciate that. I really can appreciate that. So that might have been her moment, but she still has a lot that she can do in this process now, and I think at the end of the day, we need to find out from people who's going to be helpful to us. We need to find out what people's positions are. And we're not asking enough of those questions. We've gotten very emotional about this process. Everybody's a celebrity. Who looks cute? Who makes me feel good? Who's going to do good for you? How about that? I'm gonna go up and down this the calls, and I want you all to give us some closing thoughts, Roosevelt. And when you hear my voice, that means we need to move on to the next person. Roosevelt, you got a minute.
Okay. My first candidate is Warren, second is Sanders, third is Biden. If it's between Biden and Trump, I'm sorry, but I gotta go with the guy that is gonna reverse all these ridiculous executive orders, and the guy I know is not gonna dip into Social Security, which Trump said he's gonna reform it. Whatever that means, he's gonna reform it. So let's look ahead of 4 more years. Think ahead, 4 more years of Trump, and think 4 more years of Trump, and think. You always talk about what they've done in the past. Let's think what he's done in the past 3 years. That's all I can say. Thank you for giving me the time.
Of course, always, my dear brother. Jim, what's up? Tim, Bob, Tim, what's on your mind?
Okay, with me, we went off the gold standard that protected our money. We went off the silver standard, which protected our money. So then we had to have something protect our money, which unfortunately is our federal government and the banking systems that our federal government relies on to continue making capital or profits to afford us to borrow money, to buy a house, to buy a car. So when we vilify savings of banks, when that happened, something that Barack Obama, our president, was one of the best presidents we ever had, saw as something rational as well. We can't be always blaming the boogeyman and using the word fear when it comes to an ideological and political movement that says we want everybody to pay for everything. And the $72 trillion, there's not enough billionaires on the planet Earth to afford $72 trillion. And that means that the middle class, for everybody, and I can't stand those words, middle class, because that means there's a lower class. I prefer to call middle income earners, lower income earners, and high income earners. We've got to get away from that term class. But be that as it may, I'm not afraid of Bernie Sanders. If I had to make a choice to vote for any Democrat right now, it would be Bernie Sanders. I don't like what Biden did in California by choosing somebody that would take away my religious rights and my Second Amendment, First and Second Amendment rights. Biden made a bad choice when it came to Beto and Buttigieg. Not good for the American people. So I have to choose Bernie because what he wants to do will never happen. Because we'll have every Republican against him in the House and Senate, and he'll have 75% of Democrats against him in the House and Senate. And he can appoint a Supreme Court justice, and he can appoint some judges, and he can do some executive orders, and that's it. And his fans will find out they cannot get what they want in the United States of America.
Mylan?
Yeah, Tim, want to certainly clarify my statement on fear. I think that since you understand, the strides that President Obama has made, and kind of, resonate yourself with the Democratic Party, that's one thing. But for the power of President Trump to use his mass media and to go on stage and say, Bernie Sanders is a socialist, Bernie Sanders is a communist, that's dangerous. And he's able to tap into that fear that, yes, you may not be able to come up with the dollars and cents, as Senator Sanders has said, but you also have to take into account the totality of things, the military-industrial complex that costs us billions upon billions of dollars, the justice system, and the cost it takes to keep people in prison, instead of looking at ways to rehabilitate them and looking at alternative ways to prison, rather than the justice system we have now, is billions upon billions. The cost of getting sick is billions upon billions. Student loan debt, which is majority not paid back by the time people die. You have to look at the totality. So that's my reason for saying fear. I hear you. I agree with you in a lot of the sense, but I think you have to look at the totality of things.
Robert Patillo.
I think we have to get out of the ideological at this point and move towards the practical nature of politics. I think a lot of the conversation has been around the kind of the abstract idea of values and not the mechanics of what has to happen in order to win campaigns and win elections. Partially, let's take, for example, the price tag question on the Bernie issue. I think one of the callers earlier asked how much money will come out of his check. Realistically, this deep into a race, Bernie should have an answer for that. There should be a very clear, just like when Elizabeth Warren sat down in that kitchen for that campaign video to explain Medicare for all and laid out the cost, laid out how the tax structure would work. And I think that before we talk about the deep state and centrist Democrats and the DLC, you have to have your ducks in a row. So the same way that he should have been at Alabama for Selma, he should have a economic readout of exactly what the structure of his tax plan would be. When Pete Buttigieg in the debate asked him, how are you going to pay for Medicare for all, he shouldn't say, well, do you have 2 hours? He should be able to lay that out for the American people. So a big part of campaigning is a postmortem and understanding what went wrong before. I think the Bernie campaign has to look at that and figure out what they can do in the next month, because by mid-April, most of the delegates in this race will be decided. So he needs to figure out what he needs to do in the next month to turn these things around and put himself in a position to appeal to more of the American people and what the stakes are and what the path forward is him going past Super Tuesday and going towards the convention.
I think you're making a lot of sense, because we were just in South Carolina, and one of the things that we did not see with the Sanders campaign, and I love Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. I love what they stand for and what they're fighting for. You had Kevin Gray, who was the architect, and he ran Reverend's campaigns in '84 and '88, and you weren't even born then. And I don't say that in a condescending way. You just don't know. I'm just trying to help you to understand that when we looked up at '84, while Reverend is on this running this improbable campaign, for him to have won South Carolina and Virginia then and Mississippi, it was shocking.
Yes.
You were like, oh, I remember the Secret Service, Dwight and Robert and Chaparral and Roosevelt and Jim and Mylan and Cortez, my intern who's in here. We were on a bus, and back then, it was high tech to have a television that that you just put the batteries in, okay? Because that was high tech stuff. And I remember the Secret Service agent stumbling to the back of the bus because, it was going real fast because, of course, we were trying to get to a place. We were running a little late. And he said, Reverend, you've got to see this. And he had kind of stepped out of his lane, if you will. And Reverend said, okay. And he was talking to someone. He said, no, Reverend. And he pushed the camera. He put it on the table. Because, in the back of the bus you had some tables. It was a traveling bus. Mm-hmm. He said, Reverend, oh my God. I don't use the Lord's name in vain. He said, oh my God, you're winning Mississippi, Reverend. And to see this look on his face, Dwight and Robert and Chappelle and Roosevelt and Tim and Mylan, he just kept saying, oh my God, Reverend, you're winning.
Secret Service.
Oh yeah. Because it was mind blowing. And so when Robert says, wait, you can't go past people who ran those campaigns and expect to win. In South Carolina, the fact that you don't have Kevin Gray, who's still very connected in the state, who also writes for The Nation and The Progressive and Counterpunch, who's close to Katrina Vanden Heuvel and close to the boogity get down black folks, and you don't have him on your team, that's not smart. You gotta have the people who are already on the team running your team. You can't just find your new batch of people, because it doesn't work like that, right, Robert? You need to, Dwight. You got to go to these people who've already done it before, and that's not what they're doing. And I'm hoping and praying that they will do that, because that is the only way that they're going to win. It's the only way that they're going to win. I didn't realize Chappelle is still here. Chappelle?
Santita, I'm still here.
Okay.
I wanted to say to Tim that, in 3 years we have over a $7 trillion debt thanks to your President Trump. And my thing is that everybody keep on talking about what we can't afford. These are the exact same things that FDR was hearing, how it's unsustainable, we can't afford it. But everybody right now is waiting to hurry up and get 67 so they can get all these great benefits FDR put in place. Everybody waits for the moment they can retire and get their little check and then go ahead and do whatever they want to do with their life. So when I hear people telling me what we can't do, it just makes me want to push for what we can do. And I see that America really has an unlimited credit card, because we buy and give to the rich all the time. Just like these tax cuts, they say, hey, we got an unlimited credit card. We're going to put that on the super gold visa, platinum, because they gave it to them and didn't blink an eye. So don't tell me what we can't do, because money is there. We can be in debt to China, and they can call in our debt tomorrow. But guess what? We're going to find that money. So I'm trying to tell you, we got the money. It's about what we want to spend it on.
Chappelle, the issue is, are you trying to win an argument, win a conversation, or win an election? Because though you might win the argument, the question is, how do you turn out, 85 black folks in Montezuma County, Georgia, on March 24th at 7 o'clock in the evening at a gymnasium, which the governor has moved the voting site. We're talking about the practical mechanics of it, not the big ideological discussion around it, what should happen, what could happen. The Bernie campaign has been missing out on those small practical aspects. Even despite having a here. And look, it also
they do need to. They need to get people like Trevor Gray. They need to get more black people involved in their campaign. And I'm hoping that because he lost so heavily in Super Tuesday, that he actually realized it. Because I tweeted him way before I was with Santita in South Carolina, and I tweeted him as soon as I got back to Chicago, like, boy, you need to get the Jesse Jackson campaign workers to work for you. Else you're going to be in trouble with black people. Wait a minute.
And one of the issues I think we can't avoid is the fact that Bernie Sanders has been running since 2015. But Bloomberg was able to sweep in and buy up a lot of the best black political minds throughout the Southeast. And how do you let that talent not be already in your corner? How do you not? Because Bernie had these fundraising dollars. He had the money to do it.
Now, you know that money talks. Bloomberg dollars are long.
But Bernie could have had those folks locked in already in the beginning of 2019.
The former Black Panther who almost got killed in Chicago, sitting up there telling y'all, don't Bloomberg, here's the man. The dollars are long, and people positions can be compromised. Their positions can be compromised by the mighty dollar. That's why the Lord says the love of money is the root of all evil, honey, because people will change their mind for a few little coins in their pocket and sell their whole soul for a few little pences or promises. I can't wait till Clybourne don't get nothing. I can't wait. Because Joe's gonna turn his back so quick.
If I may.
Clybourne gonna be like, what the hell happened? I can't wait.
Well, let me say this, but okay.
that black people, Bernie's campaign needs a ground game. He has online support. He has the young people, but he needs to reach the older, upper middle class black constituents. I totally agree. And the only way that he's going to do that is if he has people that look like us campaigning for him. So those calculations, I'm hoping that he reassesses, and I also agree about his messaging. Some of his messaging needs to change as well. So I agree with all of that. But what I don't agree with is black folks telling us that Joe the man. I don't agree with that.
Well, I will say this. Having said all of that, before I get closing remarks from Dwight, I think that Attorney Patillo makes a great point. Because even with Mayor Bloomberg's money, there's something that Senator Sanders has to begin to understand about the black community, our breadth, our depth. I think he tries, but he has to understand. Because you need to understand, as Charles Ellison did say, we have interest. We do care about criminal justice reform, and we should. But we also care about getting a vocational or an academic education. We have a broad range of issues that are uppermost in our minds because everything impacts us right early. And so for him to have not had that talent in his camp is very telling. And so because he never should have lost that badly in South Carolina. Shouldn't have done it. Because Reverend didn't lose in 84 and 88. And he's, as you said, Attorney Patillo, he's really running on Reverend's message. Well, he's got the baton now. Okay? He's got the baton. And so, but what Reverend did was he found a lot of great talent. He didn't have any money. And, when people feel they're part of a movement, they'll work for no money or less money. They will. And so he has to look at that because those are blind spots. And those blind spots could lose him the nomination. And we don't need to lose right now. And I say that as an unapologetic progressive. We don't need to lose right now. We don't. And so he needs to get to know the people who did this before, because this was done before. That's what we keep trying. I've talked to a few people in his campaign, and as I share with them some of the experiences that we had in Jackson 84 to 88, these black people are shocked. They're like, really? I'm like, do you really think you're a first timer here? Really? You can't think that this has not been done before. First of all, we had to get you in the door, honey, because they were not considering putting black people in senior level positions in a presidential campaign until Reverend Jackson, and that's on the Republican and Democrat side, because we had young black Republicans for Jesse Jackson, and the head of that was Armstrong Williams. Black people got on into the Republican and Democratic parties through the Jackson campaign, period. So these blind spots have to be opened up, period. Otherwise, we will lose this nomination and fast to someone who has not aligned himself with our interests ever. Dwight Mckee? Your thoughts?
I think that Bernie can help himself if he starts to put reparations on the table. And if he consider the black candidate and put that out there, he can bring balance to this all this Biden momentum. Secondly, politics is the regulation of the distribution of goods and services. And it always amazes me that the people that are on the bottom end of the goods and services are the most philosophical about how they distribute it. It really don't matter how they distribute it if you ain't really getting any. You know, whether it's called it socialism or communism or capitalism or however, whatever ism you call it, if you ain't getting ism, any of them, you are a little presumptuous to me to get locked into the fact of the method of distribution. And all the distribution is going from the top down rather than the bottom, the top to the bottom. So I think that the fact of the matter is that this is going to get very interesting. I still see it playing out at the convention. I see it being, you know, depending on how these next debates and this next election cycle comes out, is going to play out in such a way that nobody's going to have a clear majority. And we'll see, you know, which way it goes. But ultimately, whether it goes east, west, north, south, up, down, is going to be decided by the black vote. Mm. And what we exact from it is going to be more on us than on them.
Well, you know what? I think you've made some points. All of you have made some points. Robert Patillo, Attorney Robert Patillo, and Dwight Mckee, I thank you for staying on with us late. Chaparral, bless your heart. Roosevelt, Jim, and you know what? I have to just say, you know, Chaparral is one of Attorney Patillo and Dwight Mckee and Roosevelt and Jim. I mean, excuse me, and Tim. They have Jim up here. I know you, Tim. Chaparral, you know, is part of the fire you hear from her. She's a great activist, and she's also a mother who lost her son. And we've been trying to figure out what happened to her son as he was shot and killed right across the street from a police station, and all the cameras were down. It was, I think, 4 years ago today. Was it not, Chaparral? Absolutely. And so we are praying for you as we honor the life of your son, Courtney, who would want his mother to continue to push as she pushes. And I think, you know, Robert and Dwight and Roosevelt and Tim, when you hear her passion, you know, she's had to fight. And that's what you're hearing in part. And so, you know, let us give her some love and prayers today because, you know, a lot of people are in a lot of pain and they're fighting through it. And we need to acknowledge each other's experiences and understand that everybody has got a contribution. Everybody matters somewhere. And you know what? Now, more than ever, you need to know how important you are. You need to know how important your vote is. Your vote is important. You are important. And your vote is the right that gives you every other right that you have in this society. So use it. Use it. And yes.
See, the other part is be of good cheer because Joe knows you.
Joe, you know, you know what? Dwight is not you. I want you to go to heaven, Dwight. So you keep your mouth shut. Wait a minute, and he feels my pain. Oh, okay. Joe knows me, and oh my, you know what? If someone else says that,
say that without crying. if Joe knows us, and you know what? We know Joe. Man.
And Santita.
Woo! No, I am gone. I'm done, y'all. It's been an hour. I love you. I love you, Roosevelt, Tim, Robert, Chaparral, and Dwight, and Cortez, and Lady B, who's not in here, and Nichols. Boy, y'all are too much. And Chaparral, just just let us know when you're gonna do your stand up, because Roosevelt, Tim, and Robert, you're gonna come in from Atlanta, and Dwight and I will be in your audience. I love you too, you crazy woman.
Love you too, Chaparral.
Love you, Roosevelt.
Absolutely.
Chaparral, I definitely love you too. I have lost a child. So I'm the father of a child that somebody killed. So believe me, that pain is something. That is something. Pain is nobody can understand it unless you're going through it, and it's not something you get over. It's something you just simply live with. So my heart reaches out to you across these phone waves, and trust me, I know that transcends everything we've talked about. That pain and that love that we still have. So
thank you so much.
Well, God bless you. One of the blessings of being with all of you is that even as we disagree, we love each other. And we do it in a respectful way. And I thank you, Tim, for jumping into the Lion's Den always and getting beaten up. But I gotta think Tim likes to be beaten. I really do. It's something crazy. He get no, you don't. You lose all the time, all day long, just losing. On the wrong side of history. We're trying to save your soul. Now I love all of you, and I will see you tomorrow. I'm trying. I love you.
In his lot, so don't worry about it.
I'm gonna worry. I'm gonna worry. I'm gonna continue to worry. I love you all. God bless you. Have a good one. Love you, sweetie. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. I'm out of here until tomorrow. Love you. Okay, we can let Roosevelt go.
There you go.
Okay. Woo! Okay. Oh, they just wanted to let me call Chaparral real quick. And boy, she got people fired up today. Oh my gosh.
Hey, Santita.
Girl, you got everybody fired.